Topic one: Black, brown, and LGBTQ. Oh, now I'm getting some kind of static. There's some really loud. What is it? Who is it? Sig, that's you. Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, we'll try it again. All right. Topic one: Black, brown, and LGBTQ Twitch streamers came together to boycott Twitch on September 1st. They claim that recently they've been inundated by a wave of hate raids and that Twitch has done nothing about it. This isn't the first such boycott. Is it fair to say that Twitch is unresponsive to these concerns when Twitch already has tools in place to deal with this? Do these boycotts ever accomplish anything? All right, yeah. So this has been a big thing. It's even made mainstream news that they were going to have this boycott, which I think went farther than the other boycotts, and that like people actually paid attention to it. And people have been doing hate rates. So like in their Twitch chat, they'll send bots, and they're full of like racist stuff, like dropping the N-word. If they think they're gay, then dropping the F-word. If they think they're trans, then there's a whole list of things that can tell them, or just putting porn. One or the other, right? All these things to harass streamers who are non-white and not male and not straight. So it's been happening for quite a while. Apparently it's escalated, right? So like it happens to me too, right? It happens to me every so often, but like it's escalated for a certain few people, saying that like all they're doing is dealing with this now, and they want Twitch to actually pay attention to it. So we'll do introductions. Like give your opinion, short introduction, then we'll jump into the open panel. All right, so let's go to Fanatiq.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I got hate rated not too long ago, and I remember having encountered it. Like I was more in like a nigga we made it kind of feel, because it was just like, wow, like they considered me important enough to come to my stream and hate raid me. And it was on the heels of me dealing with this one person that was like coming up with these crazy allegations and doing some nonsense. And it was really interesting because like shortly after that I got hate rated, and I felt like I spoke to who I think is probably one of the most people who's probably more aware of this than anyone else in this community, Trihex, because his face is oftentimes associated and used with these things. And he was kind of giving me the history of that and how his name can be misused and how his emote, his global emote is the most banned one. And long story short, what he basically explained to me is that Twitch is doing a lot about this. These are not anything new. He's always been like the recipient of these things, and Twitch has always gone above and beyond to make sure that they banned it. And they had banned it for quite some time. It's that people found new technology and new exploits to be able to get around this. So we're just basically waiting on the next patch, but it will be taken care of. Twitch has always addressed this, and we're just waiting for it to happen again. And they're actively working on it. Yes, I think they're hateful. I don't take them so personal, but yeah.
Clive?
Yeah, on the technology side of that, I mean, I might have to like ask GSU Gambit or something for some, professional advice on what they could do. But like, as far as like whether the boycotts are effective, when I read this, like the thing that I was the most concerned about was, minorities removing themselves off of the platform, which is exactly what the point of the attack kind of is to disrupt your message, to disrupt your voice. And I wouldn't want to see people remove their ability to speak to their audiences to combat that. And it's not really their place to have to hurt themselves to fight these people. That's not the ideal way to go. And I think, maybe the burden can be shifted maybe to the audiences, right? Like where we put our money, maybe if we want to attack Twitch, maybe not do things. I don't know if that's going to be TLS.
Sorry, someone's hitting their desk.
Oh, that's me hitting the desk with my arm. Sorry. These points are so, I'm just trying to drive them home. We could probably financially support the streamers a different way so that they're not taking a hit. That might be a better way to combat it.
Thank you, Django.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly in line with Fanatiq about this because it's very difficult in general to do. Like a lot of the ways that you try to stop bots have already been tried and have already been kind of overcome. I've seen like a lot of people recommend, hey, like enable email verifications on a lot of the chatters. You try adding more captchas, and like they'll throw these recommendations around. But the problem is, if someone really wants to cause hate raids, it's not too much more because these are already solved problems. So Twitch has acknowledged everything that's going on, and they're saying that they're going to, like I said, release a patch, try and fix a lot of these things. We're kind of waiting on that to see what happens. But so far, it's not been too much of a problem until this past month. So I think it's probably going to get solved. It's just going to take a while.
Sick.
Yeah, to piggyback a little bit off what Django said, like talking about these sorts of raids and all that. Like I've been on the internet for like most of my life, and like it was even like back. It's weird to call it back in the day because I'm 26, but like back in the days before like things were like we were on these heavily moderated, so big mono platforms like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or something. It was basically just like the Wild West, and I've kind of gotten used to this sort of stuff. Like when I was solo streaming, and sometimes guys would come in, with all these sorts of crazy things. I'd just be like, "Oh, okay," and just get in. But like, I feel very, I don't know, black-pilled about that sort of treatment on the internet. Like online, we're gonna be with disproportionately white, disproportionately male, especially in gaming spaces like Twitch. We're gonna have disproportionately wealthier people, just sort of coming in here, and that's just gonna come with a lot of prejudice. Okay, whether it be benign or just outright hostile. When it comes to this sort of stuff, I think that ultimately, I don't think that we can just like stop it, right? Entirely. And all you can really do is fight it, Kind of like how you fight discrimination IRL.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Next, Felicia, you just found out about these topics, so if you don't have a fully formed thought on it, that's fine. But if you do, I would love to hear it.
I guess I just kind of I agree with what a lot of you guys are saying. It's I know being a woman and just watching other female streamers, like I see the harassment that they get, and be it bots or real people. And I didn't know too much about like how Twitch has been handling it so far. So it's nice to know that they have plans in order to like fix it and stuff in the future. But I also kind of agree with Sig in that I think it's gonna be a recurring problem just because of the way human beings are. Like it's gonna keep happening. And you just gotta roll with the punches, fight it as it comes.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. Felicia, do you stream yourself? I was curious. You stream?
I used to for a little bit last year, but
okay.
I moved and couldn't be bothered to do my setup again.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Okay. Yeah.
She has a great YouTube channel. You should check it out. She reacts to all kinds of great stuff. Okay.
All right. I do get some harassment on there.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're black, brown, and gay, obviously, and quote unquote, like especially visibly gay, right? If someone can look at you and say like, oh, you're like, you have some sort of stereotype that I associate with being gay, and that it's so easy to be a target, and like I can't. So when Fanatiq said that before, talking about like getting the hate, like I remember when I first got like my like a hate raid like many months ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm big enough that they care, and it's the welcoming party. But it's a bit of a sign that like I guess you're somehow making a splash, and that they'll start by calling you the N-word, and like a whole list of bots calling you the N-word. But yeah, I think that with Twitch, they what gets me about this is that like I guess they do have tools, right? So I was watching a video about this. I forget where it was, but one of the people who have been a ringleader in this boycott, she was saying, she was pushing back against the thought that they have like tools, right? Like you could just put your channel in like subscriber only mode, or like follow only mode, but like for like 30 minutes, right? Like you have to follow for 30 minutes before you can actually do it. But things like this frustrate like asshole trolls, right? But she said she didn't want to do that. Like that in itself wasn't enough. And now I'm like, okay, so what exactly do you want them to do?
Um,
I think that's accurate. Like, so when it happened to me, I have a mod, an amazing mod named Zovia, and he instantly did that. Like, I didn't know what was going on. Like, I didn't know the hate rates had been a thing. And like, yeah, I got like a whole bunch of messages. And they were like, I was like, oh, this is weird. But again, I've been on the internet, I guess going on about 20 years. So I'm an old guy. But yeah, so for me, like when I encountered it, it's like, okay, so yeah, some random hating folks. Like I'm not particularly bothered because it's just like this is the internet. Like, and I come from the fighting game community. Anybody that knows that community knows what you're dealing with there. So to me, it was just like, okay, like yeah, it's just okay. So some people are being hateful. It's being disruptive, and so he put it on like the follower mode, and then they started hosting me for one viewer, and so then it was like, okay, I don't know what to do for this. Oh, so then eventually I just turned off the alert box, so then none of it came up anymore. So it wasn't disrupting the stream anymore, and it was just like, okay, so there are tools right now. Yes, there could be better tools for it, and I think Twitch is going to do those things, and I think it'll be fine once they do. Again, I don't like the idea that we're pushing a narrative. Like, I'm all for protest. I'm all for like doing things to like make people aware and so on and so forth. I just don't know that this didn't seem like this was a case of Twitch being willfully negligent such that we needed to send them a message and do something in order to get their attention. That we had their attention. They're responding. They've already like mentioned like some of their intentions and that they will be dealing with this issue. So to me, it just seems like we're getting really fed up with something that's happening that Twitch is honestly not contributing to in any capacity, and that they're doing something to prevent. Like I don't know what is the purpose of us doing like some sort of mitigation or something. Like what is it we feel like that Twitch isn't doing?
Yeah, and it's very obvious that Twitch doesn't want this to happen. This is such a bad look, and the more people that are able to not have these problems mean more people streaming, more people watching. Them preventing, or them, if they decided, hey, we're going to ignore this, they would just be losing numbers. It would be, right. It's not even like that they're super considerate for helping us out. They just don't want this to happen. So they're going to do their best to fix it. They're probably going to not release some half-assed patch, because if it keeps happening, people aren't going to be happy. People are going to start quitting. The unfortunate thing, I kind of wish that, Mixer, am I allowed to talk about that? Other sites didn't die, because it's very hard to really boycott something if you can't find an alternative. Because, let's say Chick-fil-A, for example. I know a lot of people who just don't eat at Chick-fil-A. They could eat anywhere else. It's really easy. But it's very hard to be like, well, I'm going to stream on YouTube. I'm going to go to Facebook. Okay. But no one's as big as Twitch. So it's very hard to get as much change as people think. But most likely they're not going to half-ass it. They're really not.
Yeah. Do you feel like the boycott was reasonable?
Do I think a boycott was reasonable?
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to remember because I feel like they acknowledged it after the event had started gaining traction. To be fair, I think they would have caught wind of it. I think so. Wasn't the tweet on the 11th? Right, the long tweet where they were laying out a bunch of stuff, and then I think the event. Let me mute a second type.
The event happened yesterday.
The boycott was yesterday. Twitch like addressed this.
No. I'm talking about when was the boycott? When people announced they were going to do it? Like people started talking about like, hey, let's get started. Let's try to get everyone to get a part of this. When did that start? Because that was.
I'm not sure honestly, but
so
I feel like yeah, we
Wreck-It Raven, right? That was the.
I feel like Twitch like started addressing it almost immediately.
Yeah, I think that at that point though, boycotting probably wasn't necessary, but it feels weird. I think people just, after drumming up support for it, people weren't going to back down because they were so they had zeal about it. You know what I mean? Do I think it was necessary? Probably not. We already had their attention. Right. And like I said, like again, I really do think that they were going to fix it. I think the boycott took down. They were expected, or at least from the previous year, we dropped about 1 million views, so about a fourth. Which is pretty big.
Why are we punishing?
I think maybe
wrong.
Oh no, I can agree with that. I agree that I think the only thing that they maybe did, but it's kind of unseeable, is maybe you kind of made them want to push harder. But that's even like barely there at best.
Point that we have to assume that they weren't really working with fervor, when it seems to me like the evidence points toward like they have historically dealt with this problem, and each time they've done so, like they've like effectively done something about it. It seems like they've always taken this seriously. It sounds weird to me, like that we're like to almost imply like, nah, they weren't really about it though, like they kind of didn't really care.
No, so let me be more clear, because I'm kind of like dancing around. I'm not being very clear. I don't think the boycott was necessary. I think that the people, once they started getting riled up, they wanted to boycott. That's probably why they kept going with it. I don't think for a lot of those people, I think that they probably didn't have faith. I have faith. I think they're going to do fine. I don't think the boycott was necessary.
I wanted to answer, because earlier, Fanatiq, you asked, like, what did the people who were boycotting, what did they want? They want like some kind of specific changes for Twitch. And if anybody was reading chat and the stuff that GSU Gambit was saying, a lot of these things, well, some of these things may not actually work. But this nonetheless is to answer the question. So they wanted to, they want the platform to end mass account creation. So being able to generate multiple accounts off of one email. And they wanted to, they wanted the streamers to be able to decide who can enter chat based on how old their accounts are. So they were saying that like the people who are doing this, the accounts are always like a day old. But then from what GSU is saying, this is not the case.
Yeah, so like GSU probably said, there's always ways to get over these barriers. These are like old things that websites have always tried to do. If you put days, like you need a certain days for account creation, that's going to probably cause certain people certain actual humans not to want to use the platform, while certain bots just have to be created a few days prior, or like make more emails, or it's not really stopping the issue.
Yeah, of course, I agree.
Yeah.
The only thing that one of the more extremist ideas that I had thought of was linking it to a phone number. So like you have to have your account linked to a phone number to chat, follow, and subscribe. That would definitely, I don't think they want to do that, because that would take off a lot of people from wanting to sign up. And also it's honestly, I just don't want to do it. It's a big pain in the butt. But like when I played CSGO, I had to do that. And to not play with hackers, you have to do that. People do find ways around it again, but it's a much smaller issue.
Yeah, one of my friends, she got hacked. This person named Clara like completely like put some program on her computer when she was hacking in CSGO. It was a pretty crazy video. But anyway, look, so the thing is, what we're seeing, as we've always seen, is like the emergence of new technology aimed at like dealing with like new problems, right? With more access and with more nefarious people, like people are going to try to do things to find ways around systems, right? So we see in Sony now, like they have a reporting system in Call of Duty, so you can't just get spammed with the N-word 1,000 times, because the second you do, all of a sudden your account gets banned. And like they give you like a warning, I think once, and then after like this the first warning, if it's like egregious enough, then they just literally ban you from the platform irrevocably, right? So you have to create a whole new account. Your system can get bricked such that you can't get online anymore, and so then that's you have to buy a brand new console. That's a huge deal. It like limits your ability to resell it. It limits your ability to play your games online. It really harms your game, because almost like the vast majority of games are aimed at online play, right? So we saw them respond in that way. We saw Twitch with when League of Legends first started, where they at one point they made it specifically for League of Legends that you had to like you had to do Facebook. Like you had to connect your account with a Facebook account or something, I think, in order to be able to be able to comment. So that they're evolving. Right now, we just seen like hate rate 2.0, and so eventually they're going to do something where they have to where they can fix it. Like it's just I think it's crazy, because it sounds like people saw an effective tool and were like, hey, we're going to use that without understanding the purpose or reasoning for that tool. You use a boycott when you feel like maybe that you might be powerless in the situation, or like powerless, and you feel like the powers that be are not responding or acknowledging the problem that you're facing. That was not the situation here. Twitch was not like just flippantly like, whatever, like you guys you'll be fine. Like they didn't have that attitude. Twitch seemed like they wanted to respond. And I feel like we didn't even give them the ability to do so. And I don't know, that kind of bothers me. It just seems like it was a really misplaced misusage of a boycott there. Which is my opinion.
When it comes to things like, you know, hacking, raiding, harassment, all this sorts of stuff, it always feels like an uphill battle. Like I know that like companies and stuff like that always have to try to fight these sorts of things, but it just seems like it's always just going to happen. Like if you ever noticed any competitive game that is like, especially team-based ones, all team-based ones are all toxic. Every single one. There's not a single one that is not. Every single one has a bad reputation, especially the most popular ones. Just because of the way people work. If you have people and they're just going to communicate with each other, they're just always going to be spewing hatred and stuff. And until like we can do like as much as we can when it comes to like censorship, but like they start doing things where they start coming up with new words, right? Like remember that time when I think a lot of white nationalist areas still do this, where they just call us Googles, okay? Where because that was a thing that happened because when you Google, I think it was something where if you Google certain terms, black people come up and it's very problematic, and then like they got really mad about that, and they started calling black people Googles. Okay, and then like when the thing with Ahmed Arbery happened, okay, they started calling us joggers. Okay, like, it was just like it's hard to keep with this sort of lingo when it keeps evolving. It just becomes a meme, and then it becomes like a joke. Yeah, FNX died, but I'm serious. They started calling him. You haven't called a jogger, that's why. Okay, like it's just like. And then like, you have to like talk to them about like these dog whistles and like the people on Twitch, the people on fucking like YouTube, the people on like I don't know Mixer, Rip. You know they're not going to be able to keep up with that. Most of them are fucking old as hell. They're not going to get it. We're going to ban those words.
Listen, all of those are good. I give them props for it. I don't encourage it. I think it's awful to be like you're finding dog whistles, but those are very funny phrases. I'm sorry. It's at least clever, right? Like you got to give them that. I remember when we were having an N-word discussion here, and then Destiny said it one time. He said N-word us, and I died. I died. I thought that was funny as freak. I don't know. I think it's clever. Yeah, they're going to find a way. So why are we getting upset at a company? If it seemed like they were dragging their feet, we should we have every right to be upset. But I don't understand. Like they didn't do it. They weren't doing anything wrong. I don't look at Twitch and feel like, man, you guys really dropped the ball here. I don't get why we would be upset at them.
Yeah, and it takes a long time to do these things. I think it comes from, I think Gambit might have mentioned this, but it really does come from a misunderstanding of how easy or hard this thing is. A lot of people think that it's just, oh, hey, you know, like you can do this. You're a big company. It's very easy. It's
yeah, you know,
if it was that simple, statement. You know, when Valorant made their kernel deep anti-cheat, we wouldn't have hackers. Okay, it's as deep as you can get in your computer. We still have hackers in Valorant. It's a real rampant issue. People will find a way to find whatever loophole in whatever system you have set up. People exist for that purpose. If you have made a system, there's always going to be a way to break it. That's why Windows has never been secure. That's why everything, like anything that is just every single technology, people are going to find a way around it. So getting mad, I can understand that. Like getting mad and keeping going through that boycott is pretty ridiculous because they gave him like what, a month? I mean, the issue might have been happening maybe. I feel like it came out of nowhere. Maybe I'm missing it. I thought it may be a month old, 2 old, and then they decided, hey, we're gonna do this.
You're right.
But it's like that seems too quick. I don't know. I guess maybe if they really felt like they weren't acknowledging it, but once they did, your job's done.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know.
We still got to stick it to them. We still got to make them pay.
I don't know. I'll push back on this a little bit. I feel like of these companies, they say that all the time. Like they acknowledge it, right? Saying that you acknowledge it doesn't mean shit. That anything that's actually going to be done, right? Like they'll say like, we're working on it, but are they working on it? So I mean, I guess I imagine like the point is to put pressure on them to make sure they actually follow through, because there's a lot of concerns that streamers have had in general that Twitch has not addressed, right? Twitch is like famously with its like very poor like discoverability tools, and there's like a whole list of stuff. Sorry, but like the point is that like just because, I mean, like if you want a large company to respond, you're going to have to put some sort of pressure on it. You got to embarrass them. And it's not clear to me. I don't know. Like I honestly just don't know it's not clear to me if Twitch was going to do anything, or make this a priority at the very least, right? Because another thing about doing something, and the other thing about making it a priority, right? Those are two separate things. So maybe they were going to do something, but it's not like a priority until like it's in the news, and now they're fielding questions from reporters. You know, that's a different thing to a company than some customer complaining. You know.
I would say at least two things about that. One, it is for them, minorities, untapped market. The more they go into that, the more money they make. The less that hate that we get for existing in this sphere is going to be very, very good for them. The fact that I will agree, bad press is probably going to hurt them, but you would have to make it really seem like, hey, they weren't going to solve this, but they acknowledge that they were, and their track record has been good. You know, if you tell me like, oh, hey, like let's say upcoming month, Chick-fil-A is like, hey, guys, we're not homophobic anymore. They've done that in the past, then they retracted that. I would not trust that until it's been going on for a long time. Twitch has solved this issue in the past. They're probably going to do it again to the best of their ability.
One of the people that led the boycott said that Twitch didn't respond to his, the racist behavior that they received and the racist treatment they received.
I think that's a big part of it. Maybe because they reached out before and they just didn't get the support that they wanted. So that's what I felt. Could be a group of individuals.
Well, because it's like I can understand if Twitch doesn't like respond to an individual, but if they've like released statements about like, hey, here's what we're dealing with, this is how we're handling this. I don't know. And then again, as someone pointed out that I was going to point out, but he pointed it out before I could, their track record, it really does mean something, man. Like when they've been consistent in this regard, like they have always handled this. They've always worked to make sure that this wasn't a thing that was just easy to do. It sounds so misguided to me to be like, yes, this company that has always taken steps to prevent people from being able to do these things, like they haven't done it fast enough. Like I don't know, man. It's one of the most visited websites in the world. Like I don't. Yes, it's gonna take them some time, but.
Yeah, some of it is a little weird. So like one of the people that led the boycott said that Twitch contacted them and said that they're actively working as quickly as possible to make it harder for these things to occur. And then another person that led the boycott said that they wanted more transparency and that they hadn't been contacted. So it's, and I'll throw this in chat for people who might want to read it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like people, when you ask for transparency, I would understand that again if these people didn't have a good track record. I would say at least Twitch always being really bad at communicating with what is happening, the lack of transparency, would be more worrying, again, if their track record wasn't good on this. I think like an example of this is when we talk about how Twitch liberally bans people and doesn't really explain why. That's something that if a bunch of big streamers tried to boycott that, hey, go for it. That's been a long-standing issue. And maybe they said, maybe then they release a statement and say, oh, we'll fix it. If you keep going through with that, no shame. That's been an issue for years.
Yep.
This has been a short-term issue. Mm-hmm. They've responded to the best that Twitch can. And they've done well in the past. I mean, this isn't really that big of an issue. Whereas like, again, other boycotts for other Twitch-specific issues, I think would be more productive.
To me, I think that the real problem, I don't know, I'm like, well, the guy keeps like turning off to like the real problem, but I think the real problem is kind of just like, again, targeting these sorts of places where these things are organized. And these places are usually organized, let's be frank, on places like Discord. They're usually organized on place like, can I say Kiwi Farms? I'm just gonna say Kiwi Farms, like let's just say it, right? Like they're usually organized on places like on like 4chan even, right? Like these sorts of places. And I feel like these kind of places need to get hit, you know? Like usually the places where others congregate is usually how you avoid that sort of talk, because a raid is it's a very fast thing. It just happens, and like the people that are on Twitch, the administration and stuff like that, can't respond so quickly all the time because it's just going to keep happening. They'll just attack smaller people that a lot of people aren't watching, right? And it's just going to be like, well, it's just going to discourage them. And like I don't know, it's just something where you just have to attack it at the source rather than like what I think is like the symptoms, which is like what these hate raids are to me.
Um,
How
so
do you,
go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna ask, how do you attack the symptoms?
You mean the sources?
Oh, I thought. Sorry, I must have misunderstood. Yeah, how do you attack the
Yeah.
sources? Then?
How do I attack the sources? Well, geez, man. Well, that would have to involve things that are just like outside of Twitch itself, right? Like that would have to involve like fields and stuff like that could actually come onto things. Like wherever these sites are being hosted, right? Like Amazon itself, funny enough, stopped hosting they were using Cloudflare or whatever. Were they the ones that were on Cloudflare or something? They stopped hosting. It wasn't Breitbart. Fuck. Oh my god.
Parlor?
What was the fuck? Huh? Yeah, Parler.
Parler?
Yeah, that's hosting that. And that absolutely fucked Parler, right? And Parler was like the alt-right Discord fucking area, bizarro world, okay, where shit was getting organized all the time. It was fucking horrifying, okay? And like a lot of these companies like Amazon end up having that kind of power associated with them where they actually own these sorts of hosting sites and they can just completely shut down entire platforms that are being made under their nose.
Just
So
add Google and Apple also shut them out of their app stores for a little bit as well.
I kind of see where you're going, except one thing to really hit on is it doesn't take a lot of people to organize something like this. It's not like they can't just like, it takes one person, by the way, to do this attack. To get mass amounts of people doing a bunch of different attacks, maybe it takes more. I'm not actually sure the numbers of how many people are orchestrating these many attacks. But for the most part, it takes one person to cause an entire like DDoS attack, for example. Hate raids are much smaller amounts of computers that they're using. It's going to cost a lot less money. It's going to be way cheaper, but I mean, you don't really need a lot of people to do it. You just need one dude to feel like it. So I don't think that's really the source. I think you kind of have to battle the symptoms because the source is an individual person who just feels like causing chaos. So I think the main thing that I've always been mixed on this idea of like ignoring a problem. But I feel like that's the number one way that a lot of problems blow up is when you start acknowledging that it's something that you really hate to see and it bugs you to the core. Unfortunately, that will cause people to come back and swing harder.
No, I'm gonna disagree with you there. Like, I think it's really easy if you haven't actually had to be dealing with it, right? Like to say that, oh, we'll just ignore it. From their description of how it happened. So I haven't been hit with this level of antagonism. Every so often you get like a raid and people will just be dicks about it. This happened a lot more to me a few months ago. But like just to say, well, ignore it, and then it'll go away. No, it could just be that like one, you have to deal one way or the other, you have to deal with it. Right? So like when it happens on your stream, like, you gotta deal with it or your chat's completely shut down. And there's no more engagement, right? So you have to do something about that, and like also like the mental toll for some people. Some people it's easy just to say like, all right, well, I'm getting a whole bunch of N words in chat, and like, okay, oh well, this is another day of being black. Other people not so easy. So like, I wouldn't want them to be discouraged from streaming because they're dealing with this. It's like and so I want this to be dealt with specifically for that. So I don't like the idea of telling them, well, don't say anything, and if you do say anything, that'll make things worse. And then furthermore, I think there's nothing wrong with calling for transparency, right? So Twitch, another thing, yes, is terrible with actually interacting and telling people what they need. I know this. I've dealt with Twitch customer service, even as a partner. They don't tell you shit. Like I don't get any special treatment there. They don't tell you fucking shit. When you have a problem, you have a ticket, they don't like if they have an issue with you, they give you no details on what that issue is, right? They'll just say knock it off. What is this? Help me examine this. You go back to them with other issues and they'll just close your ticket. It's something that happened to me. They like closed my ticket multiple times. I had to open like 6 tickets with them to get something solved. They just decided like, don't need this, close. So like when I hear them ask for transparency, right? I what it sounds like to me is that they are interacting with customer service, finding it to be terrible. I've cursed customer service out on this channel many times before, and they found it lacking, and now they're asking for, so releasing something on, releasing a statement on Twitter does not mean that anything is being handled. And you should be communicating with the people who are complaining. Like Fanatiq said, like, oh, well, it's just individuals. No, those individuals matters. Those individuals are the streamers. Those individuals are providing revenue, probably small amount of revenue. I doubt there's any big streamers who have this issue. But like, they're providing a revenue for Twitch. Twitch is built on their content. And so they absolutely should keep an open line, a dialogue with them. If they had done that, if you guys are, if it is indeed the case that Twitch is working on this, if it is indeed the case that they're making moves, then keep an open line of communication. That's probably all they really needed, right? And so all this could have been avoided, but they didn't. So I don't like telling people that, like, well, they have a good track record. Track record of what? Track record of fucking up in the past, actually. I fuck Twitch. I say that all the time. Like, if you actually deal with these people, like, there's terrible shit that goes on behind the scenes. So yeah, I guess I gotta push back on all of you.
Yeah, real quick let me kind of explain what I mean by the ignore part. I don't mean don't deal with it, because you definitely have to keep your stream alive. And I'm also, this is why I've gone back and forth, because I understand the need for someone to, or not the need, sorry, the feeling that someone has of like getting hate rated. It doesn't feel good. And a lot of people are very, very susceptible to that. The only reason I do say that is because, in a very apathetic way, if no one got bothered, no one would do it. However, I understand why people will speak out, because it does hurt and they want it to stop. So, yeah, I'll back off on that. I'll agree to back off, because I understand that you can't really just ignore it. It's impossible, really.
I think like the people who are leading this want more tools at their disposal to handle it. I don't think that they seem to understand that it's not going to go away. They seem to understand that Twitch can't prevent these things from happening. They seem to have felt like they didn't have the toolbox to deal with it. And then as far as like ignoring it, I mean, I wouldn't say, if we're talking about like dealing it within your chat, like banning these accounts or whatever it is that you have to do, that's one thing. But then when you go and you do a boycott and you remove yourself from the platform, I think that is, I wouldn't say to not do that is to ignore the problem, but I do think that we have to be careful about what we're doing so that we're not feeding into what they want in the first place.
Yeah, that sounds counterproductive. What you're getting at is the idea that basically they want nothing more than to see you off of the platform, and you just really accomplished their goal. One, you've sent a very clear signal. Hey, what you've been doing is really bothering a bunch of people, which now, that's good. I guess the good thing about doing that is that now Twitch has to respond, right? Really quickly, because now there's a bunch of people that know, man, we're really getting under these niggas' skin, right? So, like, yeah, you just sent them that signal. They're aware of that now. Two, I think we lose revenue if we partake in that. And then three, it almost like seems like we're punishing a company that has always previously responded to these things for not doing something that I think we're setting like an unrealistic goal here. Like, I don't think I can expect Twitch to handle things faster than that, considering how big this platform and the long-term ramifications of the different solutions that they choose.
I think also with the transparency thing, it is rough to get on that, because a lot of the situations with why stuff happens in terms of like bans, for again to go back to that, is it's very based on the mod, and it's based on their really awful rules, the rules that are so up to interpretation. You can get banned for one thing that someone else gets passed for. And this happens all the time. It is a symptom of a large company, though, where it's like the streamers are important individuals, even like at pretty much every point. It sucks for them to lose anybody, because once you start losing, if you lose a large amount of small streamers, that's going to hurt your revenue. But it's very hard for them to care to focus. And I wish they did more of that, but I'm not sure there's any way to realistically get them to. I mean, internet companies are a great example of how annoying their customer service is. Dealing with technicians is so annoying. And the fact that they just, I mean, if you decide to not want their service, you're just one person in a large group of people, it's not the end of their world. Only if there's like a mass issue, kind of like what this is.
To play devil's advocate a little bit in favor of the boycott, it seems to me that the individual streamers who put it together, they've been dealing with it for months, as the one article I'm looking at says. And if they felt like they weren't, like Twitch wasn't moving fast enough, regardless of their track record in the past, which to be fair, I didn't know too much about, so maybe they didn't know either. Yeah, just getting that, like those hate raids day in, day out for months, and as Prime said, you might deal with other customer service issues with Twitch in general alongside of that, and it's just like frustration building up. And yeah, by removing yourself from the platform to do this boycott for one day, it gives the trolls a win, but to me it seems like it's a small victory, because if it gets attention and it makes Twitch move faster, then they're eventually going to essentially lose the battle, lose the war. They like win the battle but lose the war until the next hat comes out. But I can kind of empathize with the streamers, I guess. If they've been dealing with it for months, it just had all this built up frustration.
I guess I can empathize. I still think it's a little misguided to do, but I can understand why you would feel the need to do it, and why you'd want to engage in it. I can understand. It just seems really misplaced.
Yeah, I would say, if you're going to lead a boycott, I would hope maybe you'd be more knowledgeable about the company that you're boycotting, and you would know about what they've done in the past, et cetera, et cetera. So if they do have like everybody keeps saying here, that they have a good track record, I don't actually know what, yes or no on that. But if they have a really good track record, I would hope that would have been uncovered before you launched the boycott. And that would have been a factor in your decision to do so.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair.
We all agree.
So
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
It feels good when we all agree on a topic and we're not like sometimes when everybody agrees on a topic, some people start arguing on specifics and all sorts of dumb shit and all that stuff. But this was a great discussion. I honestly, this is
define boycott.
Jeez.
Oh, there was a second part of the question of I think at least I kind of read it as, are boycotts in general effective? So let's say Twitch, huh?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, let's say Twitch hadn't responded, and then the boycott happened anyways. Would this incite any other response, or do you think it just kind of? I really can't see a world where they don't respond. But does anyone think that they just the boycott otherwise would have made them respond, forced them to, or do you think they'd still ignore it?
So here's the thing: if this gets big enough and it's prolonged enough, because some of them seem to understand that they would have to do this for more than one day, this would need to be a prolonged thing. If you start to do this a lot, the media attention or the association for people outside of Twitch that may come in is that Twitch is a platform where a bunch of racist stuff happens, and then they may not. They may be deterred from coming to Twitch, and I think Twitch would be aware of those optics.
I think, and that's part of my problem, right? Is because I think by them in continuing to engage in what I think is an unnecessary boycott, it does somewhat imply that I think to the outsider, they would look at this and say, these people must have felt the need to boycott because Twitch wasn't responding. And I think it's an unfair message. I think it's inaccurate. And, I think that, why send that message? It seems really inappropriate to send that message because it's just not true.
So do you all think, so going back to something that Django said earlier, bringing up Mixer, do you all think that, do you all think that Mixer, if Twitch had competition, that would have made a difference, right? So if we could say that this is something that would have happened on multiple platforms, but if this was happening on multiple platforms, and let's say platform B did respond in a timely manner, then would that not have do you think that would have made Twitch respond more forcefully to something like this?
Yeah, I mean, it optically looks better when you respond. I'm not sure it actually is better because I still at least have to believe that like the more like you cause people to at least a company to have to address something, people will feel some sort of satisfaction for that and say like, yeah, it's working. If we had like basically, I think if I think the less Twitch responds to it, the less people are gonna like pay attention to it. So people are gonna have less want to go towards it. But if one company responds to it, Twitch has to respond. Otherwise, they just optically look so bad.
Anyone else? Do you think competition in the marketplace would have made a difference in any of this, or like that maybe they would have this would have been an issue that have been already tackled?
We are implying though that Mixer would be like a real threat, right? Because at the time that it had like gone down, it wasn't like nearly as big. So I think also
But Twitch had been responding to what Mixer had done. There was a change in like the way Twitch did its ads, and it's something that streamers have been asking previously, right? But when Mixer came along, and then they lost Ninja, they lost the other person. I don't know.
oh right,
When they lost those people, all of a sudden these tools that people have been asking for suddenly appeared. Twitch made it happen. So yeah.
I feel like I feel like in a competitive marketplace, we've already kind of established that these problems are going to happen anyways. So the only way like competition would help would just be if Twitch is deliberately not responding. And so I'd have to accept a narrative that Twitch was like deliberately not responding. Because otherwise, if it's a matter of like how long it takes, which is kind of what's floated around, is that this takes a while and they probably will implement it, then it wouldn't matter if somebody else was there.
Sure, but the benefit to being like if you had two companies, the benefit to being the first one to get it solved is pretty big. They might hire more people to make sure like, hey, we don't want to take this PR hit of like being behind these people. Like falling behind another company is pretty bad, so they might hire extra people. They might try to push it more as like a primary goal. Possibly.
That's fair, but then I would have to kind of accept that they could actually solve it, which I think we all kind of are like not solvable.
Well, yeah, but having more minds to solve the immediate issue is what they would be probably aiming towards, because I think that's what they're going for right now with the new patch. Even though
like they're implementing their demands and stuff. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, they're gonna basically hit whatever they can now. It's gonna stop for a little bit. Maybe it comes back even a month or 6 years somewhere. It's gonna happen again, but being the first one right now is pretty huge.
Yeah, I feel like that question already like presupposes the idea that like Twitch was in some way dilatory with their response, and I don't think that that's true.
All right, let's move on to the next topic. Before that, I think Signatural, you need to leave.
Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. Unfortunately, I have been summoned. Okay, if you all saw chat and everything. Oh my goodness. They're all mad at me. I apologize. But until then, hey, listen. This is so far has been a great discussion. It was great hearing I keep thinking Claviticus. I keep thinking it's Claviticus. Change your name because that sounds cooler. But Clavictus, you sound really awesome. Django LeBur, you sound very smart. I really liked your take on everything. Fanatiq, it was great hearing you again. I came on the panel a couple weeks ago. I'm like, what the fuck's Fanatiq at? Okay, I haven't been yelled at in the panel for like weeks. What the fuck? And okay, Alicia, have fun. Don't be mad at me. All right, and Prime. Actually, here, because I'm leaving early. Hold on, I've never done this before. How do I do this? Ah, here we go. I gotta fill out a form to do this? Oh my gosh. I'm sending you a gift, okay? But until then, I'm going to see y'all later, all right?
Okay, well, thank you so much.
See you, buddy.
Have a good one.
All right, have a good one.
All right.
Oh no, he's gonna send a raid.
So thanks so much to my audience who's here. I hit the follow button right now. Hit the follow button, make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. We do this 6 nights a week. Don't want you to miss out. So hit that follow button if you haven't done so yet. Exclamation word social and chat are my social medias. Follow us on Twitter for stuff. Jump to our Discord. That's where we have all our conversations. So don't want you to miss out there. And go to our YouTube. That's where you'll find our VODs. Our VODs live on YouTube. So go there, like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel in case you haven't done so yet. All right, let's go to the next topic. Topic 2. Hip-hop has a long history of musicians violently acting out. The excuse being that many of them come from poor and violent neighborhoods, so they are simply applying what they know to their new environment. But does any of that matter? Are these prominent musicians an embarrassment to the Black community? And if so, what can be done about it? All right. Yeah, so we've seen it all before. And it seems to happen a lot in hip-hop. I'm actually curious, is like, you could actually do some sort of comparison study in terms of like arrests compared to like hip hop artists versus artists in other genres, and what you would find. But we've seen it a lot, and we just say that, well, they grew up in these neighborhoods, but like, what difference does that make? Especially looking at through a public lens, especially since hip hop is maybe the only opportunity that so many people around the world, since it's so popular, get to interact with us, or know that we exist. So in that case, like, is this like more problematic, and should something be done about it? Signatural, thank you for the 10 hot tier 1 gift subs to the channel. That's awfully kind of you. Really do appreciate it. Hope you had a good time. Have a good time in your other engagement. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so we'll start with introductions. First with Fanatiq.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even like the way this thing is framed, to be honest with you, because I think it already implies, like, naturally that, like, there's something specifically problematic with Black people when they do this, right? But we know that white people do these kind of things. We've had like Ozzy Osbourne and his crazy stuff, Chad Muska and his nuts nonsense. Then we have Winona Ryder and her like stealing stuff, you know what I mean? And like, you have all these random celebrities that have all these breakdowns and these crashes, and Britney Spears and her antics and so on and so forth. So it's like, to me, if we've seen like such like these kinds of incidents happening on a regular basis, the fact that we would like single out Black people and say like, man, this is a problem with culture and so on and so forth, it sounds a little ridiculous to me. It really sounds to me more like what we're really experiencing is a problem with an environment that is Hollywood, which is sick and toxic. And a lot of the ways that like the celebrity is just treated and the way people interact with them and so on and so forth. Now, when you combine that with, you know, drug usage and things like that, which happen to be really prominent in celebrity circles, you're going to encounter these kind of things. But again, white folks act out, bro. Kramer was nuts. We saw what he did, right? Like, there's all of these people that do these crazy things, and you know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't think it's a Black problem at all. I don't even like to specifically focus on it as a Black issue, because it seems like this is just a elite and celebrity and wealth issue.
At Clav?
Yeah, I mostly agree with what Fanatiq is saying there. I mean, I don't know that it implies that there's more of a problem for Black musicians. I guess, since we're tying it to the Black community, I don't know. I guess maybe if there's some stats on that or something, I'll accept it. But I don't think that any like small group of people in a community.
If you could not do that, your hand on the desk.
Oh, sorry, I can't. Yeah, sorry. I don't think that a small group of people within like an aggregate, like a very small group of people within an aggregate, should hold so much weight on how that aggregate is viewed.
Okay, Django.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult because, one, I think I would be hard pressed to say that even though there are a lot of white celebrities that act out, I'm not sure how the numbers pair up. So I don't want to give too much of a claim on whether or not it's even or proportional or like anything like that. But I will say, regardless of what the actions of some hip hop artists may be, through that art, you get a lot of we get a lot of insight into what it's what they go through, what a lot of artists go through, and that's what the art's meant to do. So, you know, you may get a lot of people who, even though they turn big and then they commit crime, maybe you see Black kids look at that and they see that and be like, oh, I should be like my favorite artist. You also get people Gangster's Paradise is a good example of this. A lot of Kendrick songs are good examples of this, where it's not as much glorifying, it's just pointing out like how awful a lot of this is. So you have to kind of accept both, is that there are bad situations that happen. There are rappers who may do things that are clearly against the law, clearly can cause people to look at it and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be like that. But you have to accept that it's also letting other people and other kids see like, hey, just so you know, this isn't a good life. I think, and a lot of those are going to end up being classic songs where people listen to even now. So I think it's overall good. I don't know.
Felicia?
Sorry. To me, I'll be honest, I'm not like a huge fan of hip hop music. I think a lot of it's kind of deplorable. Um, but I do understand that like it's the artist telling their story, and you can take that or leave it. And there's going to be some people who, you know, look up to them, and it's going to be some people who like move away from that. Um, so, and I also don't like how it's like just tied to Black people. It makes like hip hop is more than just Black culture, even though it is like predominantly Black culture. Um, so I think like when it says like it's an embarrassment, like I don't think it's an embarrassment to Black people, but I just think that some of the things they're talking about in hip hop songs are just not my taste, and I don't really agree with them. Um, but yeah, that's it really. I don't really have a concrete thought about it.
Okay, so I push back on not really against you, but just something, the thought that so many of these songs are their experiences. We know that it's not actually the case, right? For so many of these people, all right?
Yep.
Like Roddy Ricch is a huge example, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like these people don't actually live these life. This is like an aesthetic they play to, and part of that aesthetic is being quote unquote hard, right? Being tough, not letting anyone challenge you, and so when that does happen, right, like you act out in maybe really dumbass ways, and yeah, so like just like trying to piece together, whether like how problematic is that, or does that not matter at all, right? Like, are you saying that it's fine when we see these things happen? And again, it's literally the only lens that some people have at all to the Black community, right? Yeah, Felicia, you said that it's not just Black culture. That's true, absolutely true. But in the end, it's associated with Black culture nonetheless, right? So countries around the world, in countries around the world, like what they see from hip hop, right, and like I guess from Hollywood movies, is like they're only dealing with African Americans, Black American culture specifically, and so yeah, like it seems like that might be an issue.
So here's my problem. It seems to me all the time that whenever we're dealing with Black issues, that they want to like label it as something that's associated with the race as a whole. Every time we want to point out a systemic white issue that's like really prevalent in white Americans, then there's all this distancing and wanting to like dissociate from what that from what that thing is, right? So like when we talk about like, man, serial killings and things like that, this is not a whataboutism, trust me. When we're talking about those kind of things, we never point out like there's always all of this push to like label this as a lone wolf, a single actor, right? Like this is not like a cultural issue or whatever. But whenever we talk about Black issues, the issue automatically becomes systemic. I mean, it automatically becomes endemic within the culture. And I think that's somewhat problematic. Yes, there are individuals that do bad things, and I can cherry pick individuals from white culture that do the same thing, right? I don't think all white folks steal because Winona Ryder had a problem. Like that sounds ridiculous to me. If we want to look at like heavy metal culture, how problematic is that? Punk culture, they've had riots, things like that. How problematic is that? Some of the mosh pits, there's been crazy violence. Some of those things have like actually resulted in really large scale violence. How problematic is that? Let's talk about the drugs and things associated with like and PCP and all of these LSD and all these psychedelics associated with some of the harder rock genres, right? Like we like those things we know that those things are counterculture, but they won't get nearly as much attention as some of the negative aspects that are associated with Black culture, which would be hip hop. And I think that that's part of the problem. I'm never going to jump on board with like kind of labeling like these problems largely as like cultural problems. I'm never going to be with that, because to me, I don't think that these are necessarily cultural problems. I think it's more problems associated with individuals within a wealthy that come into wealth and that are outside of their comfort zone, outside of their natural habitat, like living in different sort of places, like that are like very foreign to them, with access to like crazy amounts of power and fame and success, that kind of don't know what to do with themselves. But we see these things happen with young kids. We see these things happen to white people, Black people alike. How many child stars do we see that actually like grow up to be like successful, functional people? There are those people, but I mean, right now I'm living in a city where it's hotter than a spoon in Demi Lovato's house, right? Like, we know some of these people go off the freaking deep end. We know about Lady Gaga and some of her cocaine usage and some of those things, right? Or Katy Perry, or not Katy Perry, who was it? Taylor Swift and her pill popping, right? Like, we see these things, right? Kurt Cobain and some of his antics. And like, these things have happened God knows how many different places. This is not a Black issue. This is an issue with celebrity, fame, and success. I don't want to frame it that way. I just don't like framing it. I'm not trying to do whataboutism, and what I'm showing you is that this is just something that is pervasive through Hollywood success circles.
Yeah, but the question didn't say anything about cultural, right? It just said that this was a cultural issue. Just wondering, like, is this a problem that these individuals do that, right? The question was framed as individuals, but individuals reflecting, nonetheless, on the wider culture. Right?
That's the problem where I have, and and that's, I think, the only thing I'm pushing back against. I don't believe that this should be a reflection on the wider culture at all. I think these are individual actors, and they're responsible for themselves. And I think any person that would then take the actions of an individual and apply that in some sort of way to the culture as a whole, I think would be probably racist.
I agree with you 100%. 100%. But like, that's reality, though, right? I mean, we do get that, right? That is reality. That's how things do work. And so understanding the reality of the situation and not what we want the situation to be, I certainly would love for us all to be judged as individuals, but we aren't. And so should these musicians be shamed for like when they get into certain behaviors? And like, it's not like I'm giving a pass to other musicians or celebrities for their bad behavior, right? But like, should that be a consideration, is what I'm saying.
I hear it.
Somebody acting violently, whether they're a musician, not a musician, it doesn't matter. I mean, somebody acting violently, that should be dealt with. That's always going to be a problem. They don't get a pass because they're a celebrity or because
they do all the time. They literally do all the time.
Oh, no, I'm saying, well, okay, I'm sorry. They shouldn't get a pass because they're a celebrity. They shouldn't get a pass, even though their upbringing can explain something. Like, let's say somebody does have some type of upbringing that statistically would normally result in them being like a violent actor or something like that. We can acknowledge that, but I mean, it still doesn't mean that that they should get that nothing should be done about it, or that's not a problem.
Wait, so to be a little pushbacky, when you're talking about like white stardom and a lot of drugs that come with it and a lot of Michael Jacksons and stuff like that, right? That clearly, I can't believe I just. Anyways, these are a lot of issues of stardom. But I think we're kind of getting away from the point that people are talking about, of people you're usually associating crime. Like, when I say crime, sorry, I just said that and didn't specify. Being linked to charges of murder, being linked to charges of fleeing the scene, racketeering, stuff like that, right? So when you're saying like, oh yeah, like Demi Lovato did drugs, yeah, but these are generally problems, or like Macaulay Culkin, stuff like that is usually problems with stardom. But the problems that people point to when they look at Black artists are typically, let me be more specific, hip hop Black artists, because it's more of a grassroots type of culture where it really for a lot of people, at least early on, really did grow up in these neighborhoods. It's more real and authentic. So a lot of these people who became famous had links to certain events.
Yeah. So for every one black person you can show me that's associated in some sort of way with racketeering, like one black artist that you can show me that's associated with like racketeering, black hip hop artists specifically, I'll show you like 9 that aren't, right? This isn't like something where it's like the average hip hop artist is doing this. So for me, again, I think we're if we're trying to broaden this to like try to associate this with all hip hop artists, it sounds crazy to me. And then even more crazy would then to try to extrapolate that or extricate that to something more like black culture, right? So now we're far removed from the individual. Now we're associating with like pretty much all of the artists in this field. And then we're getting even further past that. And now we're associating it with the wider culture that's not even having access to these sort of things, right? So it's like, it's crazy to me. It sounds like
I understand. I'm just trying to disconnect the idea that like this isn't really the same as like a lot of these white stuff having. I think the better example was when you brought up punk and death metal has a lot of issues like this, where some of the musicians and artists there do some fucked shit. Okay, like some real bad stuff. A lot of artists in general do this stuff. Even painters, like wrestlers, because that's basically an art at this point. Like a lot of this stuff. There are people who get linked. It just matters. People like to, with hip hop, pretend like it's a large amount of them doing it, right? And it's not. Yeah, no. I basically agree. I just wanted to kind of disconnect those.
Sure. And just to be clear, right? Like, I think it's problematic that the individuals did this, and I think we should judge them as individuals. I also think it's incredibly problematic that anyone would try to associate or make a broader claim about black culture as a result of these individuals. I never ever. Who was the guy? Was it Chris Benoit who like went home and killed his family and his children and all that
Chris
nonsense?
Benoit, yeah.
Right. Like that. I never ever thought. Well, that's not true. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm gonna tell them myself. Because I think
what are you about to say?
You didn't have to go this deep, but now that you're here,
I mean, look, we know black people do this. Actually, we all do it. It's gross, right? Where when we see like the actions of some individuals, and we'll like actually make comments like, "Oh, that's white people," right? We've done it. Black people do it. White people do it too. And when white people do it, it's problematic. And when black people do it, it's problematic. The problem is because of the fact that we typically aren't in the same power positions. When black people do it, it's just like our circles amongst ourselves. When white people do it, they then use that and their power to then like inflict harm on black people in their hiring processes and their prejudices, and their not letting their children date like people within their or just their own specific dating preferences and so on and so forth. So then there's like a lot more harm associated with it. I think it's toxic and evil in either way on both sides, but I do think that it becomes more problematic because of the power dynamics associated with like these two different cultures, which allow for whites to inflict more harm when they do these things. But yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, like if I'm going to be 100% honest, yeah, we do that 100%.
And I would also kind of say like the way that people, and I might have even made this mistake because I just kind of think of this now. The way that people look at rap, they look at it backwards. They think that rap is influencing, and I actually would say rap probably does influence its listeners. The way they hear things kind of changes their perception. An example of this actually would be no one cares when anybody talks about murder in a song because we've all heard it. We don't take it as seriously as we do. But when I think it was Cardi B came out with she talked about how she would drug and steal from people freaked out, and it's like, other artists do illegal stuff and talk about it, but you don't care. But now that this one's new and you kind of weren't expecting it, you're all up about it. But anyways, a lot of, again, like rap was a very grassroots culture, at least at the start. Now it's kind of too commercialized, but these rose up out of communities where people had socioeconomic issues and they committed crime. When you have an artist that comes out of a community where a music is born and they're linked to any sort of crime, I don't think that's necessarily like, you can obviously still, you cannot extrapolate to the whole culture, but it shouldn't be a shock, in my opinion. Like if you have a community of people, some people commit more crime because of the conditions that they're in. And then you're like, why are they committing crime? I don't get it. Well, you just don't understand the issue. The issue isn't the music. The issue isn't the other artists they're around. The community that they're in has problems.
Sure.
Yeah. So the end of the question is like, what can be done about it? And I think what Django's talking about, tying it back into, I guess, more systemic issues within the Black community that lead to certain things that people just stereotype with the race.
Mhm.
When they see prominent people engage in those activities, then they associate it back, with the race even harder. While that's not okay, if we're going to talk about solutions to these types of things, all of it always comes back to the same cliche things that everybody said before me on this panel 500 times, and about improving material conditions, ending the war on drugs,
If
family
you could
structure,
not do that with your arm, if you could really...
Oh God, I'm so sorry, man. Okay, yeah, so, yeah. So, okay, I'm done talking. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but I just want to say real quick, I totally agree with that take, right? Like Django and Clavictus, I think that makes all the sense in the world. Like, yes, the way we address these things is to address the systemic issues that are influencing the culture of the individuals that would then like reflect itself through their music. Because oftentimes we do recognize that, yes, hip hop culture can be a caricature of some of the things like experienced by some individuals. Like there are people that actually did live some of the life they're talking about. Like when Jay-Z's talking about some of the, like his selling adventures, these are things that he actually partook in, right? Some of the things that Biggie Smalls was talking about are some of the things that he talked about. Like some of the things that he actually lived. Some people like DJ Quick wasn't necessarily talking about what he exactly was involved with, right? But like we know culturally what he was involved with that allowed him to get into some of those positions of power, right? And have the wealth to be able to influence what radio play and so on and so forth. So there is sort of I guess what you would call it's a symbiotic relationship, because whereas originally hip hop was influenced by Black culture, now the hip hop is still loosely associated with Black culture, and in Black culture goes to imitate some of the nonsense seen in hip hop because of the young audience consuming it and trying their best to be like whoever their celebrities they look up to. So yes, addressing some of these systemic issues, I think, is probably the easiest way. George Floyd's Justice and Policing Act is an amazing act that we all should probably get behind and rally behind. Yes, I just jumped on that soapbox. I think that's a great way of addressing some of these systemic issues. I think that would be a good start.
Felicia, do you have anything?
I'm just curious. You guys feel that it's like the responsibilities on, like, say, the artists who have like made it and who aren't in those situations anymore and who are now like doing the more commercialized hip hop? Do you think like any of the responsibility is on them to trying to change the narrative?
Sure. And we see Jay-Z do that all day, right? Like Jay-Z's like entire image is no longer about gangster rapping. It seemed like the vast majority of what he's talking about is like, hey, like here's how we do better as a people. These are the things that we can do to improve our culture, our society. Like I think one of the lines that he said that really resonated with me recently was where he said, if you're the only one in your circle that's rich, I don't remember the exact verbiage, right? But he basically made the statement that like if you're the only one in your circle that's rich, that's still broke to me. Right? Like it's not about just me as an individual winning, right? Or where he's talking about investing in credit and making sure that, like you're doing better in that way. Or he's explaining to people about like art holdings, where it's like, yo, I bought this artwork last year, it was worth 4 million. Now it's worth 10 million. Now it's whatever. And I can't wait to give that to my children, and talking about like kind of looking forward past like a lot of the nonsense and really trying to better yourselves as a society. I think like those takes are good. I think that's the way we should be looking at things. And so yeah, I just think I think yes, it's on them to be responsible with their platforms and kind of encourage growth in everyone else.
Why did
I
you,
agree too.
Felicia? Why did you think hip hop was problematic?
Okay, so this comes from maybe like a place of ignorance, but like I don't listen to a lot of hip hop, but it's just whenever like my brother would play it in the car or whatever, I was just like, I think it's very disrespectful to women. First off, like I'm not a fan of people calling women bitches and hoes. I'm not sure. Can I say that on here?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a fan of like promoting violence and all of that. So um, I'm sorry, what was the original question?
Oh, why did you find hip hop to be problematic?
Oh yeah, sorry, my roommate just like walked in the door,
That's
distracted
fine.
me. But yeah, that's and I see like people who like look up to that type of like those actions, those ideas, young people, and I just don't agree with it. I think it's problematic. But on it, like I said, on the plus side, on the other side, I do know that for some artists that are talking about their experiences. And I'm sure like not all of them are, but some are talking about their actual experiences and what they went through growing up. And so I don't want to take that away from them as well. So it's like on one hand, it's like tell your story, but on the other hand, be respectful. I don't know.
I think women have had the talk about what women has been very rough with rap. I think there was it Lupe Fiasco that had a song where it kind of tackled this issue of like how we refer to women in rap, because it's hard for people to show respect for women when you always call them bitches. But it's kind of difficult, but I kind of understand that one much more than the violence one. The violence one is a little more. It depends on who you're listening to. I think would be a first big part.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, so it's very weird to generalize I don't think you could generalize an entire media for that. And also, actually no, it's someone else. I need to think about this more.
Felicia, I don't think. I think maybe more to your point is that like, I actually don't think that there is an experience, a lived experience of needing to call women bitches and hoes, right? Like, what lived experience is that? Like, so not that people don't do that in real life. Certainly they do, which is unfortunate. But like that isn't. It's not like necessary. If you refer to women as literally anything else, and there's so many words for women in the English language, right? There's so many words to describe a woman in particular. I think there's less words to describe a man. But if you use any other words, right? And Jess was more creative as an artist, right? With like rhyming, just on just there, right? Use any other words, will we have lost anything, right? If they all artists like all of a sudden just stop using the words bitches and hoes in their platforms, like would we be poorer for it? This is to anyone.
Listen, there's no pushback on me. Like, hip hop has always been somewhat counterculture. It's intentionally provocative. I don't stand with that. I don't like it. I don't listen to a lot of hip hop. Anything that's really toxic. I like thought provoking stuff. I like positive rap. I listen to a lot of conscious rap. But I don't like the idea of like labeling the entire genre as like that one thing. I had a friend who labeled the entire genre of R&B as if I remember the word was he said it was lick and suck music. That was what he called it. I think hip hop is an incredibly diverse genre that like it encompasses so many different subjects. And so for me, I agree with you entirely. Any rap that's promoting violence, that's whatever. I think it's something that's probably not beneficial for a culture that's already engulfed in a lot of systemic oppression and things like that, which likely encourages violent outcomes. So I think that's problematic, and I stand with you there. I just don't think that that's a label for all of it as a whole. And it does suck that I do believe that sometimes that literally is an actual reflection of their culture, of actual lived experiences.
And to add on to that, I think to a certain extent, we really have to. I think the responsibility of bad messaging is always around, but I'm not. I feel really weird pushing against someone who is, if someone this is their lived experience, pushing against them expressing what their culture is like. Like if someone like is explaining like the neighborhood they grew up in, how they refer to everybody, having that and keeping that as like just an understanding is good. I don't think it, even though it can have some harmful outcomes, if some people decide to glorify it, I think that it's important to at least understand what's going on. Otherwise, you're just like hiding it and squandering it.
Okay, I've been sitting here and I've been trying to figure out how I want to articulate this, because this would be okay. So if I'm trying to write something, the language that I use is going to convey something beyond just what the definition of the word is. It conveys like the way I speak about something, if it's reflective of this area right here and how people spoke over here, it's going to make you feel like you're connected with that area over there. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't want to say connected is the right word, but I'm conveying that area by utilizing like the language of that area.
Sorry, could you say it again? I like you.
Yeah, I know this is gonna be really hard. So okay, maybe an example would be a little bit better. So like a politician maybe might change the way they speak to a different group of people. And then because of the words that the person is choosing to use, how they're speaking, those people feel more comfortable with that politician, or it conveys something beyond just the definitions of the words that the politician is using. I don't know what word I'm looking for here. One of you wordsmiths, please help me out.
Are you talking about the vernacular?
With art. I don't know. I don't want to say that that's just the vernacular. It's about like it's about the conveying of a concept or even like a culture, or the sound of music can convey something that you associate with that music, or a certain area that maybe you've been to, or certain cultures, et cetera, et cetera.
So
no one knows what I'm talking about here. Like if I write a book and the book has a lot of crude language in it, then I'm probably reading something that's going to be a little bit more gritty and raw.
Yeah.
Versus something that's like more censored, and then it might be like, I know that certain things aren't going to happen just by the language in the book.
Maybe tone. I understand what you're saying, though. It is like the way you're using the language you use gives a different feeling to everything. Because if I wrote a book about what it was like to be a slave, and I omit some pretty, for some people, very toxic words, it's not going to feel real. You're going to feel like you're watering it down. It's not going to feel like people can't really understand what it was like. But when you start to give the raw experience of like what actually happened, instead of censoring certain things to kind of be more pleasant, you get a more authentic, raw experience.
I hear what you're saying, Clav and Django, but like I got to push back against this in terms of what we're talking about. In terms of hip hop, it's like, first of all, okay, even like it's. I think the problem is that it's so the way that women, the misogynist terms that women are referred to in hip hop, are so ubiquitous. Like that's the problem, right? It's not as if there aren't other ways to convey the same message. Bitches and hoes, right? And there are other ways that they refer to women that are awfully terrible too, right? But bitches and hoes, right, does not encapsulate the experience of like being black in a black neighborhood, maybe a possibly poor black neighborhood, and dealing with women. Like these two words don't encapsulate that, right? And like you could just, and if you are trying to convey a feeling, right, well then you have these things called like rhymes that you can incorporate in your song, right? You can use the lyrics, other words to describe these experiences, right? Like, okay, there is this chick, and we, I'm not gonna try to do this now. This is gonna be bad. But like you have a woman, and you had these experiences with her, right? And apparently it involved your penis, because it always does. That's another thing, right? Because it's all because it's not even just like referring to that as bitches hosts. Like now that I think about it, right? Like it's what these women are doing in these songs, and it's sleeping with men, right? It's sleeping with men and it's being promiscuous. I don't have a problem with promiscuity. We're very clear about that. I've made that, and I've said that many times on this channel. In fact, I don't want anyone to ever be shamed for being promiscuous. But the purpose of this isn't to draw out any sort of complicated woman, right? It's give someone a detailed as to what it's like to be involved in a black community. like it's not like black women are themselves more highly promiscuous than anyone else, right? But if you listen to these songs, you would think otherwise, right?
Sure.
This is
I
what
think that
they've
there's
done to
oh,
our
sorry.
own. No, I'm almost done. Don't worry.
For sure.
Yeah, this is what they've done to our own community is by sending out these messages. Is that like black women in particular have these attributes? Again, there's nothing wrong with being promiscuous. I don't slut shame anyone, but like giving this certain idea out, right? And that's the only purpose. Like so like they'll have in hip hop songs, they can draw a complex interaction with a male, right? Right, whether it's good interaction, bad interaction, right? Whether it's their friend or someone they need to fuck up, right? Like they can draw this complex interaction. But this bitch also sucked my dick, right? Like that's how, as far as we ever get with that, and so often for many rappers, not all. And that's the problem: is the ubiquity of the same experience that's being related. That makes sense?
I get what you're
Yeah.
saying. Go ahead, Jacob.
I think that there's a lot of situations where you don't have to use bitches or hoes. Wet Dreams by J. Cole doesn't use it, and he doesn't need to. It's not an important song for that. And I would agree that there's definitely people who will use the word. It's not necessary. It doesn't help convey an emotion. And that kind of sits in the same boat of a lot of people who will make music that isn't really authentic. And in hip hop, that doesn't ring right with me. But inauthentic music or using words that aren't important, you just won't feel like using them because why not? That could be problematic. Yes, I feel like though if you're talking about, I would probably want to go find examples first, but I would assume that there are songs in which usage of the word bitch gives you a more raw feeling of what it was like. I don't think it's always needed. I think we could tone down on it. I don't think that needs to be. You're right. We could definitely tone down on it, but it's
Well, yeah, let's not. Can we can't pretend like there's not any songs that would use that word still, but would actually mean it in an uplifting way, right? Like in the same way how we use nigga, right? Like that. It's not like the music is just out here like exclusively demonizing black women. Like it. There are some uplifting songs, right? And as rappers become more conscious, like you see a lot of people kind of stray away from that kind of like language. So yeah, I don't know. It seems again, it feels really weird to me because it really does feel a lot like we're kind of just labeling or like generalizing everything unfairly.
Yeah, I don't think that it's not generalizing a group when I'm talking about this. I guess I'm more like zeroing this down on like an individual level. I think that there's a lot about somebody that they convey in the words that they choose to use, and that can tell me a lot about like where they're coming from, or sometimes even like if we have certain shared experiences, et cetera, et cetera. Like I know that if you're in like
if
a
you
certain
could stop
industry,
your
for
arm
example-
again, please.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. There are people that maybe work in an industry, and that like somebody in this industry would never refer to this thing as X, Y, or Z. They would use this word, and that'll let you know whether or not that person has like X, Y, and Z experience.
Yeah, I would say for some people, it's like when if you ever try to tell a joke in another language and they try to translate it for you, sometimes it just doesn't hit right. I would say probably with less importance in this situation, but I could still see some legitimate usages for it.
Yeah, I can see legitimate uses, but like I think you guys are still even now giving it way too much latitude. There's way too much latitude as to how and okay, so we can draw distinctions between because I tried to do this, but maybe I should do a better job of this, of saying that like not all hip hop is this, right? Like I agree with Fanatiq that hip hop encompasses a lot of things, right? But what we're talking about are the major labels, right? The more commercialized rap, and how that treats individual and the music that produces, right? And I mean that's the one that's what's mostly consumed, right? So when I'm talking about hip hop, I'm mostly talking about that. And we can acknowledge there are other rap, right? But it's not being consumed than the way that its commercialized version is, right? It doesn't have a massive label that's like international and get their songs in any country, right? So
What about Will Smith? Will Smith has never like referred to women in that way, like derogatorily.
Will Smith,
right?
come on, Will Smith. I mean,
Okay, what about Jay-Z's like latest 4 albums? What about Common? There's so many examples.
No. I'm sorry. Like you're not hearing me. I'm saying I understand that there are other artists who do that. I'm not trying to paint all of them. I'm talking about the ones who do. It's not what I'm.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm saying again and again. I recognize that hip hop covers much more than that. I love hip hop. I listen to it all the time. It's great.
But it sounded like you made the implication that these people weren't that the people who don't do it don't get like the other recognition. They won't get.
I see. Yeah. No. There are some exceptions. Like let's say, like why I balked at Will Smith because Will Smith is just like 1 in a fucking billion, right? Like how many other artists could have the success that he had, doing what he did, right? He had that along with his acting career, right? That helped put him in the position that he was able to do these things, right? Like, you know, Eminem says that too, like Will Smith doesn't have to cuss in his records, right? But I do, so fuck him and fuck you too, right? Like that's what he said, because that's what he has to do. Yeah, I actually have to curse in this, you know.
I don't think that was the takeaway that he was giving. I don't think he was basically saying I literally have to. I think it was just more of like him just taking a shot at Will Smith.
Well, I mean, I think both of those things are true. I think both of those things are true. But like yeah. So my point is that not that every artist does it, right? It's just that so many do, and it's such an accepted part of the culture, as if this is just okay, rather than us saying that it's not okay, right? That we could actually, because if you're saying, for instance, if you're saying that Jay-Z can, and I'm sure in those albums, I haven't heard them, but I'm sure those albums that you're talking about, he has talked about women, right? And so if he's not using that kind of language, if he's not being derogatory, that means he can somehow, right, refer to women in a way that isn't on its face disrespectful, and it could be a sexualized way, right? I'm not even saying like get rid of sexuality within these songs. But no, I'm fine with that too. Again, I don't slut shame or anything like that. But like the way we do it is extremely crude, and it's and I don't have a problem with crude too. But it's like it's not even a part of it is just like it's not even clever. For some of these artists, it's not clever. They're not like giving us like these interesting rhymes, right? That are really making us think. She sucked my dick is like what they're getting across. Is that there was a woman and I thought she had a fat ass, and then I showed her some money. I took her back to my place, and she sucked my dick. The part is that's the message. If we had more
dying
than
to
that.
make a point here.
Go ahead.
I'm dying to make. All right, just going off of this topic a little bit. So I do agree that I'm not talking about all of hip hop. I'm just saying the part of hip hop that I've experienced that put me off of hip hop, like anecdotally. That's what I'm talking about. And for example, I know that Pop Smoke is a like he's a very popular hip hop artist right now. I don't listen to his music, but I literally just looked up some lyrics from his song "The Woo" featuring 50 Cent and Roddy Ricch, whoever. The first line is she want a woo nigga, she wanna fuck with the woo, and then going down a little bit more. Shawty wanna fuck me inside of the coup. I can take you out anywhere, fuck a jet fare. Like, I personally do not like. To me, that's just really. I just
So
don't like
you're
it.
making the point that that's a bad song, and that is a successful artist, and so that this successful artist has a bad message and a bad song. And I agree with you that message is bad, and it's not necessarily music that should be promoted in any capacity. I prefer conscious rap. I think that's better.
Me too.
Right, and so I totally agree with you there. If you listen to the type of music that I listen to, or the type of music that I make, position. If you look at that, I make very positive, uplifting music. I've never made music about sex, drugs, partying. Sex, drugs, partying is the way to success, but not just in hip hop. It also tends to be the type of music that's very successful with pop music, even, or R&B music, or well, I guess rock, like a lot of it will be drug related and things like that. Maybe heavy metal. I don't know. Maybe their stuff is a lot more subliminal, but the culture itself definitely heavily revolves around drugs. So, like, yes, these things are problematic, and whenever they exist, I think I'm automatically against them. I prefer people to be more positive, uplifting, and so on and so forth. And I think the bad actors that promote this sort of bad music, I think is problematic. But again, this isn't a problem with Black culture. This happens to be more of a problem with the wealthy record label owners who know that sex, drugs, and whatever, and party music tends to be, and violent music tends to be significantly more successful. That happens to be what most people have an appetite for. So then they promote those things. If someone decides to make a conscious album, that album gets put on a shelf. And since that album's on a shelf, then that artist doesn't make money. So again, I do think it's problematic. It really sucks that this is a way for success for a lot of individuals, and most individuals don't have the sort of infrastructure that would allow them to deny these sort of opportunities. So they would rather do it. I've had opportunities where I could do music that completely violated my conscience, and it would immediately be significantly more successful with really, really successful artists. I have recordings of some of it. The idea is I recognize that I'm not going to do that because I have a character that says that I wouldn't be able to live with myself having done that. But again, I also have like a really successful family. If I needed to fall back on folks, I have family to be able to do that for. For a lot of people, this isn't the case. So they're going to promote whatever's going to be the most attractive. And then I just don't think this is a cultural problem, and I don't think this is a genre problem. It is a problem that exists in society. How often do we see things like Ariana Grande not doing hip hop, not doing R&B, incredibly sexual with her music at a very young age? When she was like 18, still looking like she was a 15-year-old, she was incredibly sexual. Miley Cyrus, incredible sexual images and things like that within her art form, and displaying that stuff despite the fact that a lot of her fans, like her previous fans, were Nickelodeon people. That's not like she had waited 5 years to where all of the people who were watching her on these Nick shows or Disney, whatever, I'm sorry, Disney, if they were on that, like if she waited until like those people were grown, her stuff was still airing to young audiences, and here she was performing in pole dancing and stuff. So the sexualization of the music industry and the entertainment industry is something that's really, really well known. Now, when it comes to African Americans and they're going to be talking about people, the sexualization is going to be aimed at women because obviously most of these people are male and the vast majority of males are heterosexual. So it makes sense that they're going to do so in their art form. Now, is it oftentimes degrading? Yes, I totally agree with the fact that it's degrading. Do I think that it's like necessarily more degrading than other genres of music? I don't really think so. I think very often sexualization of women is incredibly degrading as it is. We're in a sexual revolution in which the sexuality of women is being celebrated now. But that wasn't always the case. And so I think, yeah, when we look at hip hop, we're seeing the vestiges of the continuance of this like degrading work towards women, but we're also seeing like a sort of renaissance in which there's a lot of people who are referring to women as significantly more positively. But let's not deny the fact that you got people, other women like Cardi B, who is incredibly degrading to her freaking self in some of her image and some of her representation. I don't think we can take that away from them. I don't like us demonizing men as if this is a men exclusive problem when this is a society exclusive problem. Society is sick in the way that it sexualizes and demonizes women in specific ways. And I think they do it with children. I think the entertainment industry inherently does this. And it feels to me like a lot of us are trying our best to say we're not doing it while kind of like edging towards the idea that, this is really like a hip hop culture thing, really a black male culture thing. And it's just not. It's a societal culture. That's far beyond just black culture and far beyond hip hop. And I think it's problematic every time. I stand with you there. I never want women to be degraded. I never want like violence to be promoted. I never want bad actors and counterculture to become the norm. I think it's gross every time, especially when some of these people from awful situations, they're looking at these people as role models. I just want to make sure that we are crystal clear. This is not a black culture thing, not a hip hop culture thing. This is an entertainment industry thing. And the white folks that are signing the checks are promoting this type of music.
So I agree that it's primarily an issue of who's giving them money and all that. It's an issue of like, this is the popular music. That's why it's, promoted. But that still would be I would still say it's probably a rap exclusive problem with the heavy degradation of women. It's like you kind of said, it's improving, but I don't think, and maybe I might have missed a piece of this, but I don't think Ariana Grande is a good example because she is sexualizing herself, that's not the same as degradation. Degradation is a step apart away from that.
Yeah, so I want to jump on what Django's saying. One, again, Fanatiq, and I don't know, maybe we should be making that clear that like it's not necessarily a problem with black culture. and it's not something I'm trying to imply that it is. I think I'm trying to be very clear. I'm talking about the individuals who are making this, right? And the companies and the corporations. Yeah, and the corporations who are producing and pushing this. But I also want to agree with uh, Django that I think there's a difference, right? One, I never think that the fact that a artist or a celebrity has people looking up to them necessarily means that they have to act with any certain way, right? Like it's not their job to raise your fucking kids, right? And I think you would agree with me, especially in many other contexts, right? That's like it's not like my problem. Let's say you finally become big, in case you didn't know, Mr. Fanatic produces music, right? And one day he might be on a world tour, right? And I don't know, he might be dancing in a provocative way on stage. It's a possibility, right? And a parent might have a problem with that. Well, okay, well, the parent can make sure that they don't buy Mr. Fanatic's music, which you should do. But like they might make that decision, and that's fine, right? But what they should be doing is like, okay, now we need to protest Mr. Fanatic because he was sexually lewd on stage. Like what? No, it's not his job to raise your fucking kids, right? So if when it comes, so bringing it back to Miley Cyrus, right? It depends on what happened backstage. I don't know. Maybe she's another example of Britney Spears in that she was pushed to be sexualized. That doesn't seem to be the case from what I can gather. I don't know. I don't want to follow these things, but I don't know. But I'm just going to go on the assumption that it wasn't, and that she felt the need to sexualize herself in that way. If that's the case, and that's how she felt the need to express herself, like I said, I never slut shame people. So she shouldn't be responsible for like tween girls looking at that and maybe drawing conclusions. It's not her job to raise those fucking kids.
I feel like as a public figure, you always have a relative amount of responsibility. It might not be, it's not a huge amount. You are not raising kids, agreed. But your music has an influence on how people think. That's why a lot of musicians, I guess not a lot, sorry. There have been a fair amount of musicians who have been social advocates because it's a powerful way to get your message out. People listen to your music and they will remember songs that are important to them, or in a more common context. If we hear a song a lot, we're going to think about it a lot, and it does normalize. I think it does normalize things. I actually could be wrong.
It does.
But then if you accept that, you kind of have to get into the whole argument of the whole video games and how that normalizing things in our heads too. And I'm not even sure how. I haven't looked into all that. That's a whole nother thing to cross. But to go back anyways, you always do have a responsibility as a public figure, as someone making music. If your music affects people, which it does, I mean, it's your fault if people fall. Well, it is somewhat your fault if people, take messages from your music.
Yeah, and it's not just that she decided to sexualize herself. An artist can decide to be sexual. I would never hold Lady Gaga accountable if she influenced young children and on them becoming particularly sexual, because Lady Gaga's target audience wasn't children. Miley Cyrus did this very shortly after leaving Disney, while still the vast majority of her fans hadn't matured. Beyonce, when she first started coming out as an artist, as a solo artist, just in general with Destiny's Child, at the beginning of their career, they weren't particularly sexual. They were kind of more reserved. It was with time that she felt more comfortable being more sexual, and as she explained it, she's like, "Yo, my artists have grown. I mean, my fan base has grown up with me. Yes, I was a child when I originally released X, Y, and Z on Destiny's Child, but I'm not a child now, and so now these people are grown. Then I expect them I mean, I've been in the game now for freaking 5 years, and yes, maybe a lot of them are children, but we've all grown up together, and I expect my fans to be grown with me. So yes, there's going to be a lot more sexuality and things in my shows, but I'm not a 16-year-old aiming at kids. To be fresh off of the Disney career, I want to say fresh off, but the career was still there. the career was still active. They were still actively airing Miley Cyrus. So it's like you had 12-year-olds who had just began watching Miley Cyrus. Now, 2 years later, you're 18 and you're performing on these things and pole dancing in front of kids. And it's like, wait a minute. It's not reasonable to think that these 12-year-olds are going to automatically be like, this is a dope Miley. I'm not following her anymore. No, you're going to be influencing people. I think there's a responsibility there. It's not a problem with her sexualizing herself. It's a problem with her fan base and her target audience. That's where the problem comes.
To be fair, though, I also, so again, I still hold the responsibility true, but we have to let artists, I mean, I don't think we're saying that we shouldn't, but we always have to be aware that artists are their own people. They will grow. And when they make music, that is also an extension of themselves. So we are kind of looking at a person. It obviously has gradiences based on how pop it is, based on how like authentic that is. But for Miley, you could see her growth as a person.
Not that
it's hard to bar her off, or you just shouldn't bar her off from that. But there are obviously risks with her doing that.
Sure. In that 2-year period of time, man, it wasn't gross. It was like off the top, bro. Like she like really immediately transformed, almost like as soon as she got into her adulthood. It's like, yo, yes, you were a teen star. You're 18 years old now. Like you just hit this arbitrary age where now you can be sexual, despite the fact that the vast majority of your fan base are really young children still. I think that was problematic.
Yeah. I disagree. Yeah, first of all, I'm less concerned about children being exposed to sexuality. Like I feel like this is not me saying children should be having sex. That's not what I'm saying here. But simply that children being exposed to sexuality is some sort of destructive influence. Like I reject that. I think we all grew up being exposed to some sort of sexuality. And if you're a Zoomer, right, if you literally had the internet your whole life, then like you've stumbled upon things, right? So when we have like society has not fallen apart. Zoomers aren't coming out and being more quote unquote degenerate than anyone else, right? So like I don't see how. So the fact that her target audience, and I think it's fair to say her target audience is significantly younger than the average pop star at that time, right? I think that's a fair assumption. But the fact that that's the case does not necessarily mean that I think that she should have changed her behavior, right? It's okay. This is a thing, kids. Sexuality is a thing. I think it's fair that a parent might want to limit that for their child. You know, okay, sure. But should Molly have had to do anything? Okay, so what I've been thinking ever since Django started talking, the last time we started talking, was whether I'm trying to have it both ways. And I'm trying to make sure I'm not being hypocritical here with my words. So on the one hand, I'm talking about Miley Cyrus and her sexuality and how she's allowed to be free with that. On the other hand, we're talking about hip hop and the way its particular way of expressing sexuality and thinking that's problematic. So I'm wondering if in my argumentation I'm having it both ways. I'm trying to see if I can thread this needle here. And why I think one is problematic and the other one is not. I think, well, one, I think the way Miley Cyrus is a woman who's expressing herself, right? And anyway, I'm not sure if I even know a Miley Cyrus song that I like or I bump, right? So I'm not like my Cyrus fan, but the fact that it's a woman expressing herself in this way that seems promiscuous, I think is more or less fine because you get to see her. She gets to express her as herself, rather than in hip hop you have these men who are specifically portraying women in a very narrow sense, right? A very narrow sense, and not using them for much of anything else, right? And how that affects not only how that affects how Black women are viewed, and how black women view themselves, right? So I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to have things both ways, but I think there's a difference here. But you could tell me that I'm wrong.
No,
I
I mean,
was.
go ahead. I've been
I was
talking.
gonna say something about that a while back because that's kind of how I felt about it. I understand it's different if somebody is. I put my hand right here, man, so I don't. Okay. I understand that somebody sexualizing themselves is much different than being sexualized by somebody else, right? These are two very distinct very distinct things on an individual level. But the way you ended it is then you talk about where it goes beyond the individual and how women are viewed if a man is sexualizing her and whatever music by degrading her or calling her whatever, how they, might discuss women in these songs. So you're talking about how that's being viewed widely and the effect that has, but somebody sexualizing themselves could still have effects beyond just themselves and how they're viewed or how women are viewed or et cetera, et cetera. So I get what you're saying, and I feel like I agree with you to some extent, but I don't think I agree with your reasoning on it, or how you're like threading the needle as you said it.
Yeah, I think also it's very different when you're talking about yourself rather than talking about another party. And also, again, the big schism here is degradation. Like that's the big part that's important. I think that whether or not you're fine or not with her being sexualized and her having fans that are younger, that's just still like she does bear some responsibility whether it's good or not. And I personally don't think it's that big of an issue. I think it's good, probably. But I think that in hip hop, it's just there's more degradation, which is the problem. And it's again, I'll still defend this. I think sometimes it's the usage of the word is a cultural vernacular. It's something that you kind of have to tell a story with sometimes. But a lot of times people show their colors in the way that they're like, hey, I'm actually like, I just have a lesser opinion of another group of people. Hip hop has had a few issues with marginalized groups of people within their sphere that they treat worse. Cardi B was a big example of this during WAP. Everyone was hating it. It was very weird because it was just a woman sexualizing, and then everyone had a big problem with it. Lil Nas X has hit a lot of it.
Not everyone, just conservatives.
To be fair, Lil Nas X was way more conservative. That's true. I think.
Lil Nas X. No, Lil Nas X. I feel like a lot of other people had stuff with that, but I'm saying as far as like WAP, I feel like it was only conservative folks that were really, really tripping over that. Most liberals, I felt like, were like kind of celebrating the idea that like a woman was like whatever. A lot of women were basically saying that it was incredibly empowering. Like the largest voting bloc in the existence of this country is Black women, which is very Democrat, which was very liberal. So at that point, the idea that liberals were having a big problem with WAP, I just don't see that like almost at all. Black women were largely supportive of that song.
All right, I'll do some more digging. I thought I remember not most people, but a fair amount of people, conservative or not, having an issue with it, and that was like the weird part where it's like, I didn't understand.
So I don't know like where you're getting that most Black women were fine with that, right? Like there's no, I am guessing, maybe you can prove me wrong, that you have no statistics to prove that, right? Like we understand that the larger community was looking at this. We can see how media reflected it back to us. But like if there's a statistics, I'd love to see it on specifically like what they focus on it.
Well, yeah, let's really simple. WAP debuted as a #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song was incredibly successful. It can't be that if it's literally not supported by anyone.
No,
I didn't say that.
You can have a very popular song that is also extremely controversial.
Yeah.
Right. But no, controversial means that there are some who support it and some who don't. The fact that it would be controversial means that there has to be a large support group. Where is the support group coming from? We know it's not conservative white men. We know it's probably not conservative white women. Where is the support coming from?
Yeah,
it has to be a #1 thing in the world.
No,
I'll go ahead and look more into it because again, I don't have the specific numbers.
Hold on, no. You're talking about specifically a song that made a fucking splash, right? pun intended, made a splash when it came out. It was all over the media, all over news, being talked about by those conservative men who pretended like they hated it, right? But like were lusting after Cardi B and the other one, right? So like that, looking at that in isolation, yes, like it got a lot of attention. Like if that same song had come out and not gotten that attention, that publicity, would it have sold as well? I would say no. I would think that there's a reasonable case to say that they're not gotten. If like there were people who heard about this one hip hop song, right, or hip hop or R&B song, song that never followed them in the music scene, right, and who have never been exposed to either of those artists ever otherwise, right? So they're all aware of it, and they're all intaking this thing. And so yes, it's going to be number one. I'm not surprised that it made a big splash. Again, unintended. But like that doesn't necessarily mean that a majority of Black women had the opinion that they felt this was a positive influence on society. Thank you for the 1,000 bits, Nick Pibre. I very much appreciate it. But yeah, do you see what I'm saying? That like, and like people who buy hip hop, like the people who consume hip hop, they like the women who consume it don't necessarily in America don't necessarily represent Black women as a whole. So even if every single woman who had bought that song necessarily or bought the album unnecessarily believes that it is like maybe they like the beat, but maybe they don't like anything else. But even if they did, it doesn't necessarily mean that means all the rest of Black women also support it. I kind of got lost in my own argument there.
You made a good point. I was able to follow. I thought you expressed yourself well there. So do you think that if I'm making this statement that on average hip hop is largely more consumed, specifically Black hip hop, because obviously we get like people like Eminem who maybe might transcend some things here, but that Black hip hop in general is largely consumed specifically more by conservative, by liberal people than conservative people. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
Is that? Yeah. No, that's an accurate statement. Yeah.
Okay. And so then when I'm making the assessment that because this song is literally number one in the world, right? And it's like there's a highly divisive, it's like highly divisive, right? Where a lot of conservatives, specifically Republicans, don't listen to Black hip hop music. Like largely that demographic, it's pretty polarizing. Hip hop in general is pretty polarizing. When we find that, and then you have a song like WAP, where you have like large white Republican pundits like Ben Shapiro, like describing the dryness of his wife's vagina by like pointing out how her describing the moisture of her vagina must inherently mean something. She has an STD or something, which was crazy, right? And he wasn't the only one. When it's being like super decried on Fox News, and you know how those sheeple operate, I think it's reasonable to say that a significant portion of those constituents would follow suit and dislike that music and feel that it's inappropriate in some kind of way.
Actually, I take back my words before. That like, you know, hip hop is very much consumed by white individuals in this nation, right? You
white liberals, yes.
Yeah, right. And so
white liberals,
yeah,
not white conservatives.
Okay, sure, fine. But I'm saying that just looking at the number, right, of tracks sold, right, does not tell you, like the fact that we're landing in the Billboard position does not necessarily is not an indication that the majority of Black women in this country thought this was a positive song or a positive event or whatever, you know?
That in and of itself,
there's
just
too much
song going to number one, that's not what I'm making the argument. I laid out a whole bunch of other things to associate with it.
Yeah, you did, but still they'll all rely on the positioning of the song. All of that still relies on the thing selling well. Everything.
Those are reasonable. That's reasonable extrapolations to look at the how the song did and the average constituents that would follow that song.
I think it's too much statistical noise to actually be able to make that conclusion. That's all.
I would imagine that there's probably still like a good chunk of people who consume music that find that like the lyrics in the music are problematic or, you know, not progressive or et cetera, et cetera. I mean,
if you can lift your arm again, please.
Oh God. I don't even know why I'm doing this. I never do this. This has never been a thing before. I don't know why this is a thing today. But yeah, I don't think that you could extrapolate that from that.
No, you're right.
not
200. You're right. It's 241 million people that were like watching this song with like the ratio of like 2.2 million to 130,000. Crazy backlash. Now, if we want to look at like a Justin Bieber song where people were hating it, or Friday, where the song got a lot of airplay, but it was ratioed so insanely, we all could recognize like, dang, this song is getting a lot of flack. Not a lot of niggas were liking that. And we can do that all the time. But if we want to just like pretend or like turn a blind eye, pretend in some sort of way that like this is not like, it just sounds crazy to me that we're doing this. Like we know that this song was incredibly successful. We know that niggas was feeling this song.
Sure. To be fair, I think we're. I don't think this is the hill to die on for anybody. So, like, I think it's okay to, because the bigger point about this was just that a lot of people within rap culture will shut out other minority groups. This is not the hill to die on. It's okay to say like, hey, it's very possible. I'm very willing to believe that, hey, people probably received it well. I would probably look more towards Cardi B's controversy receiving a lot more hate than usual, and her earlier career having a more rough start. And also maybe the appearance of less female rappers also being problematic. But then I would also go towards like just there are issues with minority groups within rap. Do we disagree on that?
What do you mean by that?
So like homophobia was a pretty big problem for a while.
Sure.
We kind of agree that degradation of women happens a lot,
Sure.
Or at least more than we would like.
Yep.
These types of things. This was the broader point. I don't think we need to die on the WAP hill. Okay. I think we can agree to that, right?
Pretty good hill to die on, though. I think pretty sexy hill to die on.
I agree with that too.
Felicia, do you have any thoughts on it so far? Thank you, Azazel Bedazzle, for the 1,000 bits. Yeah, everyone's good here. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Honestly, I had something in the beginning, but then when it I kind of zoned out. Like not zoned out, but like I just thought we were kind of moving away from the point a little bit with the whole WAP discussion. I didn't think it was that necessary.
So yeah, I think that looking back and forth between those two issues of Miley Cyrus and how Black women are treated within hip hop in general, I think that there are different ways of expressing sexuality. I think there's good ways and bad ways, basically what I'm saying, and that Miley Cyrus is not necessarily a destructive way. Do I think it's particularly constructive? That what Miley Cyrus, what I've seen from her, I've seen very little. So I'll say I'm speaking from a place of ignorance because I don't follow any of this shit, right? But from what I'm seeing from her, it's not a particularly constructive way, right? She's not really breaking much new ground here with like what she's doing. But is it particularly destructive? I'm not sure if that it is. And what I see from other hip hop stars, commercialized hip hop stars within, the mass media, right? The one that gets disseminated the most. I feel like that is more destructive than constructive.
I just want to add with the whole Miley Cyrus thing. Like, I kind of agree with Fanatiq that maybe like she has a young audience, and maybe the timing wasn't right. But she was an adult. She was 18. She can do whatever the hell she wants. And also going along with the message that she was trying to put out there is just like she was owning her sexuality. She was like showing the world who she is, and like it was all about her. Like whether you agree with, like, she does have influence, yes, but she was more so making a statement about like, this is who I am. You need to accept it. And she wasn't like putting anyone down purposely for that. Whereas I feel like in some hip hop songs where they're not, those songs are not meant to empower women. Women are used as a tool essentially in those songs. When a female artist says bitch to another female artist, mostly in like pop or whatever. Like if Ariana Grande says like, I bought 7 rings for 6 of my bitches, she's saying it affectionately, the same way that like the N-word is used affectionately. But when a guy says it, it more so comes off like, oh, like he's actually like he's putting me down, he's degrading me, calling me a bitch, like what the fuck. So
Right.
it just, yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah,
So I'll try and say this without hitting this table. So there's, I guess where I'm maybe confused, maybe I'm having more of a question here, but it's one thing to sexualize yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the issue that Fanatiq was bringing up was that it was being thrown towards children, right? And so children won't. We can sit here and say that she's sexualizing herself, but do children think on those terms? Which I would imagine no. That's usually the reasons why we don't want to present some topics to kids, because they can't rationalize through it, right?
Kind of.
Like, is the kid gonna see the nuance of that? Like, oh, okay, like, oh,
there's not really much nuance, though. It's just like having it be open in culture is gonna make it more accepted.
Well, there is nuance, because there's a difference. The nuance is the difference between a woman sexualizing herself versus a woman just being like a sexual object to people. Right?
Oh.
So does a kid see that way?
Well,
like,
yeah,
does a kid think of that? Does the kid see the distinction, like, this woman is sexualizing herself?
You don't have to have that deep of a thought, I don't think, to interpret what the music is saying. That's just like if you're like us trying to parse which one do we think is problematic. If a kid sees someone feeling like they're allowed to be sexual, they don't have to think, well, this one's okay, but the other one is not. The kid's probably just going to think, oh, cool, this is okay.
Or they might just think that women are sexual objects. Like, maybe that's part of where that comes from, right? Like, it's
I don't think you would get that from Miley's messaging, though.
Oh, okay.
Wait, no, wait. From some of the representation, like from I guess this is a whole nother conversation. I'll just say, like, loosely. I mean, I think the idea about the harms of early sexualization of children, like, those things have been kind of like easily detailed. We could like literally just do a very simple Google Scholar search, and I think it would come up with some really realistic like examples of why that's so problematic. So. I don't know. It sounds crazy to me that we would be arguing like ever that it's not harmful to sexualize children.
No, hold on.
Sorry, I guess what I'm thinking
because I'm not sure that we're arguing. We're talking about the same thing though. But go. Sorry, Django, finish your point then.
Oh no, that's all I was saying. I think the range that I'm looking at, I guess when I say this, when we're looking at Miley Cyrus fans, probably weren't like 6, 7, 8. It's more like 15, 16, 17.
No,
like, even if
they were younger than that. No, they were tweens. She was going at tweens. Like, I definitely agree with Fanatiq there. They were
so
young.
like 13, 14?
Even younger than that. Tweens and younger.
Think about the average age of the average Disney like Miley Cyrus person.
Yeah.
They're probably 9 and 10 years old.
Yeah, I would definitely.
That's what I was picturing in my head.
Yeah, exactly that.
Because I think teenagers can like understand those concepts. We should start teaching teenagers those concepts. Oh my God, my hand! I'm going to do it again. So we should teach teenagers like these concepts, boundaries and sexual boundaries, things like that, consent.
But that's not what you're not going to grab that.
A whole, different topic.
No, I think
you're not going to get sexual boundaries or these concepts. You can't get that from Miley Cyrus twerking.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. What Fanatiq and Django are getting at. Is that I agree with you that not necessarily kids are parsing it in this way, and so yeah, I don't necessarily trust kids to like sit down there and think like it's like a song that sounds good to them, that's popular, and it's by maybe a star that they like in some other context. So, but like, one, I'm never a save the kids. Save the children type of thing, right? Like, won't someone ever think of the children? I'm not one of those people. I never pro clutch. Thank you, Not Real News, for resubbing for 8 months. Thank you so much. So kind of you. Yeah, I'm never a pro clutcher there. So I don't necessarily give a shit if kids are consuming something that might otherwise be problematic, right? What I'd rather is dissect if that message itself is constructive or destructive. In and of itself, to society in general, and not.
But Prime, you gotta know that like things can be like not necessarily harmful for children. I mean, not necessarily harmful for society, but while simultaneously harmful for children. Like we have like rated X material, right? Like that we would say this is not a problem in and of itself. I have no problem with rated X material for adults. They can make the decision to like go ahead and consume whatever the freak they want to. They're
Sure.
adults. They're grown.
Sure.
Pornography.
Sure.
I think it's harmful for society, but in general, I get that some adults might want to consume that. And I don't have the right or even the desire to legislate what other people consume.
Okay.
However, but to say that pornography is not harmful for children would just be erroneous as hell.
Which is a good thing.
I don't think that's what he's
Which
saying.
is a very good thing I didn't say that. Yeah.
I know you didn't, but my point being, the thing that you take from that is not that you said that, it's that we have to make a distinction between what's good for society, but still harmful for children. So when we're talking about something being harmful for children, making the broad claim that some things are just okay for society literally ignores the entire point that we're making, that even though it might be okay for society, that since her target audience and the media is pushing it like a message towards children, then now that this otherwise harmful message becomes problematic.
It's the point. It's the point that you're making, not the point that I'm making. And so the point that I'm making is that that I think sexuality itself. I mean, I agree with what your larger thing, right? But you took it to pornography. You took it to the extreme, and that extreme is not useful here, right? Because pornography is not synonymous with sexuality. Pornography is a form of sex, right? A very extreme, specific form of sex that we can say has specific effects, right? But that doesn't mean that sexuality in general, right? Like I think you would agree that, for instance, taking it to the other extreme, that if you saw if kids saw two people kissing, right? Like not even French kissing, just putting their lips together, that is not harmful. It's a form of sexuality, though, as being displayed in front of them. But like we as society, we generally don't think that's going to scar them, right? So like we're moving on. We're on a scale here, right? One end pornography, on the other end a chaste kiss, right? Holding hands, right? So like we're deciding where does like Miley Cyrus and all this other, and in terms of hip hop, right? And hip hop, how that displays sexuality, where it stands on that spectrum. Right? I would say that where Miley Cyrus is in a more acceptable space on that spectrum, and that a lot of the male hip hop stars and how they treat women, and then porn itself would be on a less acceptable scale for children consumption.
Real quick, to get in the weeds of it a little bit, what did you mean when what ages and what type of sexuality is harmful to the kids? So you said the kids, but I don't know what age bracket, and what sexuality does that entail? Because I feel like that's very different, because like porn is very different than Miley Cyrus twerk, right?
Oh, I agree. That wasn't Jesus Christ. So I made an example. I specifically mentioned porn only for the point to demonstrate the principle that we all understand the notion that just because something is okay for society doesn't mean that it's inherently okay to display to children. Sure. Because it sounded like when I made the argument that what she was doing was not okay to display to children, that his response was something along or something akin to the idea that, well, hey, look, I think it's okay. Like I'm not worried. I don't care about how it was basically something like I don't care about how society is viewing it or how what she's saying is if it's being displayed to children. What I care about is whether or not it's appropriate or whether or not it's appropriate for society. Right. And I was like, right, and that's
I didn't mean to,
someone is making
I kind of created a strawman there. I'm just asking. I just want to know though, when you say that, what do you mean is the improper sexuality that if displayed to kids would cause adverse effects?
So what it is I think like sexual education is very beneficial for children, right? Like it really, really helps them to be able to understand, because there can be environments in which they're going to learn it improperly from other people. They can inherit a lot of like shame and sexual repression if they're not educated in this way. It can create all sorts of harmful effects in situations where children are being sexualized inappropriately and not even able to identify what it is that they're experiencing. So there's all of these problems with like just entirely repressing sexuality or sexual information from children. But arming children with sexual information is not at all the same thing as sexualizing children. I would argue that what Miley Cyrus was doing was sexualizing herself and projecting that image to a target audience, which would be children, and that in and of itself is inappropriate.
I see. Okay, cool.
So you guys just draw a line in different areas.
No, I mean I'm just trying to understand.
Prime and Fanatiq.
Oh, Prime,
draw
yeah.
line in different areas.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that. We're deciding, we're on that spectrum. These things lie, and we're to say that this is more acceptable society in general, or it's less acceptable, because I don't like that. I just look. I want to look at it through the lens of constructive and destructive, and yeah, because even though, like, going back to hip hop, and bitches and hoes, right? That, like, I don't think it's something that should be necessarily banned. It's unacceptable, and just that, like, I don't think it's adding anything, and I think it literally degrades the artistry.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's don't be shy about saying like it's a bad thing. Just as art is able to be appreciated, you have to be able to criticize it. Banning is obviously what you don't want to do, but like saying like this music is just trash for us as a society, perfectly like reasonable. That is 100% understandable.
Yep, I agree.
Um,
1,000,000%.
I'm not sure if I 100% agree with that. But I would say that, yeah, that the way we process these things, the way society, I think that with the artistry, right, that it ends up stifling them. Okay, so let me relate this to something else. In hip hop. Now I think we talked about this on this panel at some point in time, but there's a channel on YouTube. I don't watch it anymore, and I'll explain why. But like a channel on YouTube called King of the Dot. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that one. But it's like a rap battle type channel, and I used to watch it, but like quickly I got extremely bored with it because of like the barbs that people were saying, right? Like mostly it's like I'm gonna fuck your bitch, right? Like I'm gonna take away your woman, right? Or fuck your mom or something, right? I'm gonna take away a woman that is under your purview, on part of your ownership, and I'm gonna have sex with her, and that's gonna degrade you, right? Or other things, like there are other things like, oh, I'm gonna fuck you up in the parking lot or some shit like that. Like it's dumb, right? Like they weren't like, and you heard like more or less the same thing over and over again. Then from that same channel, there was a guy who showed up. I think he was Canadian. He was a white guy, and he blew the competition away. Like he completely destroyed them. But all he did to do that was expand his fucking vocabulary and what he could insult a person over, right? And it was good. It was great. It was amazing. Loved it, right? But for the most part, you didn't get that. And so when I'm talking about bitches and hoes, it's not that I think it's necessarily bad, right? Because I mean I have it's an old song now, a really old song. But was it Project Bitch from Lil Wayne and Cash Money records, anyway. It's one of those songs where it's sexualizing women in all the bad ways that we're talking about, in all the bad ways. I like the song. But I could, at the same time, I can still say that that trend is degrading the artistry, because there's so many more ways that we can relate to women and still talk about sexuality, because I don't think that's a bad thing, like as I keep saying. But like, if you limit yourself into this one perspective, I feel like we are worse off for it. We are like, we're looking at a peephole, right? To look at a huge landscape, Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen like I think the one that got me kind of really bored of watching a lot of rap battles was like there's one between Dumbfound Dead and Conceited, and one of them was making just Asian jokes, and then the other one was actually making like on the spot responses and hits.
Yeah.
And it would like, one of them was really good and one of them was just like classic Asian jokes I would hear in high school. And I understand that it's like, it's just not entertaining to me. The problem is obviously if someone, and it's got a good and a bad aspect of like, since people like it, it's going to be popular. But but it's really hard to get around that without trying to enforce a certain type of music. And I don't mean like super heavy-handed enforcing. I mean just like you start pushing a certain type of music. I mean, people are just going to go to something else what they want to listen to. It's not really. It's I don't know how you would ever go about tunneling it towards that more the more thought-provoking lyrics. Even if it's not much, it's like I don't think you could ever pigeonhole to that.
I mean, I think it's less. I think it's less. Oh, okay. I think it's less pushing the artists to do a certain thing, and rather us looking for better, right? And giving artists the tools. And this, Fanatiq said this previously when he started, right? I think it's giving artists the tools so that they can express themselves, because there's a lot more artists who want to be rapping about a fuller, experience than money, drugs, and hoes, right? There's more artists who want to do that than they are currently doing that, but they're on a label, right? A label that says this is what we want, and this is what you'll write, or you won't get paid. So like giving them the space somehow. I don't know the best way to do that. I don't know. Like supporting more independent labels, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure the best way to make that happen. A public option for record labels, I don't know.
That has, I think, been sort of tried in some countries where they try to promote certain types of music, but then you get into the problem of like new music won't be as recognized, and then that stifles the some of the creativity of music. I think rap is also an example of this, where like the fact that it kind of, again, like it was homegrown, people liked it, they listened to it, they found a way to make money off of it, yes, so they started abusing that, but from the start, that's how rap music got promoted and why it's so big now. So even though it does have like very large negatives, I think it's kind of okay in the end that we get to hear a lot more rap music because the fact that you're able to make money off of it now.
Yeah. Clavicus, Felicia.
Just thinking about Chance the Rapper and how he wasn't tied to a label, and he like won a Grammy, like a couple Grammys, I think, for his album. I don't remember what the album was called. I didn't listen to it. That's not like trying to be contrarian or anything like that. It's just like I don't listen to a lot of rap music in general. But I heard about his story. I was like, oh wow. And I've also heard that he's more like palatable than other hip hop artists. Like he's more like accepted by a wider audience because he stays away, or he raps less about like the drugs and the sexualizing women and violence and all that stuff. I'm not sure if any of you guys can speak to that, but I just thought that was very interesting. Is like, well, he did it essentially, so why can't others?
Yeah, except Chance is a very exceptional case, but also he's not free of it either. I would say less, but it's very rare that you see someone like that. But the fact that it is possible, though, that would never. I'm not sure that possibility would exist without the popularity of rap as a whole. But no, he doesn't do a lot of it, and he's very hit and miss. But I mean, he's a success story about that. Yeah.
Yes. On this part of the conversation, I don't listen to rap music either, so I don't have a lot of input as far as music is concerned. But as far as like how these things change, television shows are a really great example of this. I mean, a lot of us have witnessed how television shows evolve, and I'm not talking about like special effects, but how the writing changes. Serialized dramas are a lot more popular now than they were when I was younger. And so, a lot of that, you've got to have somebody that becomes high level success, something like Will Smith, right? That you might point to, but then you need other people who try and emulate that too, that can also have a pretty decent amount of success. And I don't know if that's happening in the hip hop world, so I don't have a lot of input.
I mean, you got your comments and your Jay-Z's.
Yeah, but
Was Jay-Z like that big beginning?
Sorry.
No, not in the beginning. No, he was not.
Yeah. I mean, he's huge now. Like Jay-Z, I don't think necessarily helps your point because like he has his own brand, right? He's like Beyonce and like what they do is not what artists can do. It's like with Taylor Swift, when she like made that big stink about Spotify and how they were treating her music, right? Like, and she just took her album straight off of there. Well, that's Taylor Swift, who was a mega star, right? Like AAA tier music artist.
Well, to
Yeah,
be fair, there was a whole bunch of people that did that all together when they were trying to launch Tidal, which was crazy to me.
yeah. But no, but still, like a lot of artists, they don't have that opportunity. They take what they get from Spotify because that's how music is distributed now, and so Spotify gets to just run over them. They don't have that
It's
love.
true.
So on the side, what Jay-Z does, and Jay-Z was the one who started Tidal. What Jay-Z does not necessarily reflect on the rest of hip hop, right?
Sure, but he's not the only one, is my point, right? Like, and it's not like he was the first one either. There are plenty of rappers who like do that. Like, again, I'm not disagreeing with you that there's a lot of them that don't, right? Because it's too easy, and like the people that want to work as hard. I mean, Jay-Z does happen to be one of the more talented rappers in the game, so it's easier for him because of his talent to go ahead and just go with the conscious route because I mean he has the skills to be able to pull it off that still make you want to listen. But like yeah, I think even in pop music, right? You have your Tori Kelly's, really successful artist, not sexual at all, pretty much in any of her music. It's just never been her image. Like she's an outspoken Christian, and she's kind of allowed that to sort of define like her musical direction. So like it exists. It's not common. I'm yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you that it's problematic when it's not there, but it's just not common. Who wants to make
So
those changes?
the hard thing there, and I don't have any input, but like, are there a lot of examples of people who try it and then fail though?
Well, sure, but I mean, I don't know that would be an argument against the idea because most musicians fail.
I'm not talking about like small time, but like are there people who reach that level that are doing that with, I guess, conscious lyrics, and then do they fail or they spit her out? Like, what happens commonly when people do try and do it?
I don't know that many people do try to do it, but I would say that the vast majority. Again, I don't know that this would be a really strong argument because the vast majority of artists fail, right? Like,
yeah, okay. So I guess it would be what I would be asking for would be then the rate of success of those people who do versus the rate of success of the people who don't.
I don't know.
I mean, that's
I don't think they're in
your head, but I'm just
the thing
just
that's
in general.
harder,
like how many people?
The thing that's harder about answering that isn't just like there's not a lot of people who think. First of all, there's not a lot of people who think deeply about much. Not a lot of people who think deeply and are able to put it into a song because writing a song is not easy. We'll just put that over for now. You have to also take into account how many people are also using music to just write whatever. The words don't matter, but the beat matters. The feel matters, right? Your flow. That's way more important for a lot of people. So when people focus on that, you can make a big career out of that, sure. But a lot of the time, there's a large amount of people doing this, and they're just not interesting because they sound like everybody else. You have to account for all those people to get a good percentage of how many people are trying and failing versus how many people are trying to be popular and also fail. Like there's so many numbers here, it's just impossible unless you do like a deep dive into this.
But those other factors though would be the same for everybody, right? Everybody like across the board, like an aggregate, would have those struggles.
Sure, but how do you attribute someone's success or failure to just their messaging? It'd be really hard to define that, right? Because there's people with the bad messaging who are still failing, who tried to go in the direction of everyone else, but just didn't find success. And what is it? Is it their singing ability? Is it their lyrical ability? Is it their image? Like there's so many different things and factors. Did they not have the money to invest? Did they not work as hard? Like what goes into success? There's so many things, so it'd be hard to attribute it to anything. So I don't know how we would quantify that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, it's fair to say though, at least that most people, since they don't care about the words 9 times out of 10, you are going to see a lot more artists that exist while saying whatever they want, just as long as musically they're interesting to listen. I can at least, like, if you want to just go with that, I mean, that's true.
I think.
I feel like
No, go ahead, Clav, please.
Oh, I was gonna say, I feel like if there's like a lot of people who don't care, if like I'm not holding you to the literal number 9 out of 10, but like if there's a lot of people who don't care about the lyrics, you would think that you would then bridge over to the people who would then be like turned off by the lyrics, right? Like the small minorities. So you would think then, if that were the case, that most artists would probably try and make their stuff more palatable to everybody.
Yeah.
No, to the contrary. My nephew, I know people that are making music, but like when I like pointed them to like, hey man, here's some artists that are really, really great with their lyricism, and they're like going out of their way to try to like really say things. They were just like, yeah, but that's not the music now. Literally was their response, and I couldn't really argue against it. And it's like, well, sure, but then the people who don't care about it, they sometimes got to get lucky. There's just so many other factors that go into it, but they didn't care. It was like, look, that's not what the vast majority of the artists that are out now are doing. So I agree. Like, this is not the majority, but the most people are going to choose the road. Like, what do they say? Broad is a gate that leads to destruction, and narrow is the one that leads to everlasting life, right? I'm throwing in the scripture there, but yeah, the idea is like, yeah, most people are going to go with the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is the one that's the most palatable, and the one that's the most palatable is the one that's the most carnal. So,
and also, to add on, frankly, like, it's much harder to find someone who has to hear the words and has to have the words hit right for them to listen. It's much easier for your brain to go like, I like the sound. That's like just an instinctual thing. I do a little bit of music. I have a composer friend involved with Disney a little bit, but he himself he'll care about words. Sometimes it's very, 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 very common though. People just don't care about the words. It's much easier to be like, the way that I've set up this song gives me an emotion. And that emotion for a lot of people is what's more important. The words that you have to think through, not as important to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And also when you're playing a game or like doing whatever, listening to music in the background, it's way easier to not have words. But go ahead, sorry.
No, you're fine. And I mean, you're exactly right. There are a lot of artists who don't care about lyrics, who actively said in interviews, I don't care about lyrics, right? I care about the beat, right? And whatever is popular at that point in time. And it's like, well, at that point, it's like what you are is more like an avatar that is like moving around to the beat that a producer who has all the skill actually, like, you know, who actually has all the skill, you know, like the producer is the star here, and you're simply the face, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes, kind of. You
Britney
can have
Spears is not Britney Spears without Max Martin.
Yeah, absolutely.
She just isn't.
There are two halves, but you cannot have someone with bad and people will always gravitate towards someone who has, let's say you have two people with good beats, but you have one person with mediocre flow and one person with good flow. People are going to float towards the good flow. It is a combination of both, but I don't think it's like all 100% one, right?
No, like, bro, how many times nowadays do we hear how many rappers are so terrible, like with literally no skills whatsoever, can't freestyle to save their freaking life, like literally, like are literally mumbling, right?
Yeah,
like
mumble rap.
Actual talented people have stopped putting actual talent into their things in order to mumble because it's more successful. Designer had a #1 song with Panda, and like he wasn't saying anything, bro. And he can actually rap. If you listen to him before he had that #1 single in the country, it was literally like he actually had New York flow. And then he decided, like, that's not really selling. So I'm just gonna jock this nigga style. I got bras in the left. He just wasn't saying anything anymore. He didn't have to, and it made him way more money. Mumble rap is really successful right now. How many niggas are actually talking about being?
Oh, hold on. I don't know about really successul. It is successful.
It's literally the
but
most
if you compare it
rap right now in the game.
Let me look at Rap Top 10. Hold on. I'll believe you if I say this, but I know Designer fell off.
Oh yeah,
Panda. He had Timmy Turner, and then like Panda remixes. Like what else? I mean, it made him a lot of money, and people will remember Designer. But he is not. People don't associate him anymore with like good rap at all. They don't even associate him with like, oh, I need to listen to something. I'll listen to Designer. Nobody does that.
Yeah, I think the fact that it was so successful, the fact that he made it off of that, right? Like rappers aren't all out here just trying to be crazily lyrical,
Oh.
right? Like who's that one nigga with the cross on his head, on his forehead? And I can't remember his name right now.
21 Savage.
21 Savage. Bro, are we gonna pretend like that nigga's not successful?
Hold on,
Are we gonna pretend like he's a lyricist?
Hey, all I'm saying is, I'm looking at the top 100 list. He's not here. To be fair, though,
Top 100 list of what?
this is on Spotify of hip hop. Although, to be fair, some of these are old songs. Some of these are old.
Wait, top 100 within what time period?
Wait, hold on. Hold on. Let me get a better list because I think that list wasn't accurate. I'll tell you this time to the timeline when I. This one says 2021. Let me see.
Okay, well, I got to keep talking.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I think there are just certain trends that make things worse, right? And some like mumble rap isn't necessarily destructive, right? It's like not a destructive thing, but it's an example, I think. And maybe it's just because I remember a better time. But
Same.
yeah, right.
Same.
Maybe it's just that, but I feel like it limits us. Like,
I agree.
yeah.
Hip hop was supposed to be about the lyrics and the content. It
Yeah.
was literally such a driving force
Exactly.
for our culture. Now niggas are just mumbling and doing nonsense, and it's really, really harmful. And I agree that the degradation of women is terrible, and it's being amplified even more, I think, right now. Like it was a problem even back then. I'm not like absolving Snoop or any of them other niggas of it, right? But like it's even worse now at this point. But yeah, look. How many? Someone just pointed out to me. I was going to take credit for it, but I won't. Go ahead. Thank you, Astro. Lil Yachty, Kodak Black, Lil Pump, very successful rappers. Very, very mumble. That is what's hot. That's what sells. Like that's a pretty. I don't know, man. I think it's crazy to me that we would like pretend that mumble rap isn't like really successful and it's untalented and nonsense.
So, as in terms of comparatively, what's more popular? When I look at the top, this is Billboard 25, so it's just whatever's here for the time being of recent popularity. Cool, or I guess current popularity. Lil Nas X, not mumble rap. Lizzo, Cardi B, both not mumble rap. That they're on the same song. DJ Khaled, Lil Baby.
Wait. When did Lil Yachty release his last song? When did Pump release his last song? Like you can't just look right now and then say like this is what's defining the thing right now. Like these people have been incredibly successful. Some of the literal top rappers in the industry over the last 3 years. Like we're not going to pretend like
some of the top is very different than like being like I don't think it compares. I don't think mumble rap is definitively low. I think it's popular. I don't think it's more successful.
Wait, right now? Are you? Because if we're talking like 2017, it was particularly successful.
Oh yeah, sure. Before, but then people kind of got dried up on it.
Are we talking about 4 years ago? Like that was ancient history?
No, but I'm talking about like people saw something, it was new, it was cool, and then they dried up on it.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I think that
for a short amount of time, but then people get over it because they got bored.
When I hear about rap music nowadays, the names I always hear are like Travis Scott and Lil Yachty and Future and Lil Uzi Vert. So I'm pretty sure they're mostly mumble rappers.
They are.
Yeah. To your point.
I don't know, man. I hear only about Lil Nas, Kanye, Cardi B. Let's see.
Hold on.
Well,
so you're saying you don't hear about Lil Yachty? You're saying you don't?
No, I'm not saying I don't hear about him as much.
Okay.
We can also say Travis Scott. I don't think Travis Scott's mumble rap. I don't like Travis.
Travis Scott absolutely mumbles in half of his songs. We're not going to pretend that. Like, what do you mean?
All right, I'll accept that one. I don't listen to enough Travis Scott. I don't think.
Future.
Tyler the Creator.
Okay. Are we going to literally bring up Tyler the Creator like he's anywhere near the top of the game? Come on, bro. He's got to be the bottom something. What? What's happening?
Wait, Tyler the Creator's. I'm trying to find out. How would I find a comprehensive list of like what is considered other than billboards? I don't know what I would do other than billboards. I could maybe
Google
search.
see
just the specific numbers of what they got, but it kind of gets skewed when you look towards like farther back songs. Obviously, have a lot more views.
I have no evidence of this, but I say like if you stop someone on the street and say name 20 like hip hop
Top
artists,
rappers
like
right now.
they're like, yeah, you will have your Lizzos and Cardi B's of the world, but you will probably also have your Travis Scotts of the world.
Yeah, I don't know of
Yeah,
any
I don't
like
know.
successful female mumble rappers, but like,
Well, I'm not
I
talking
don't.
about I'm not talking about mumble rap. I'm saying like if you just told someone to name like right now who are the hottest 20 hip hop artists right now.
Mostly mumble rappers, and
Yeah,
and
that's-
they're not gonna name. Well, I don't know. Maybe some people. If you ask females, then
Oh.
they're probably gonna name like Cardi B and whatnot. But like, yeah, come
Meg Thee
on.
Stallion.
Yeah, she's not a mumble rapper at all. Particularly talented, I respect her.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess what I think more, it might be a result of what I listen to, but I just
that's
don't hear
biased.
much.
I don't listen.
Yeah,
to
no, that's
mumble
why
rap
I'm
at
agreeing that
all.
maybe I'm biased. I just, whenever I think about rap, I think about because I didn't even mention someone like Drake, but that's why I'm accepting I might be biased because I don't listen to Drake, but Drake's obviously one of the most popular.
I don't.
So
listen
that's
to
just
him.
me accepting bias. I don't like him. I feel. Anyways,
Yeah.
Would Drake also be an exception to the rule? Like, do you guys think?
he's
For
pretty
sure.
exceptional. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah,
I mean,
he doesn't.
not everyone is a
he doesn't
mumble
play
rapper,
beatboxes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. We were just
Yeah.
getting over getting with the idea of like, he thinks it's more popular, at least. Well, yeah, he thinks it's more popular. I don't. That's all. It was kind of a tangent.